I'm live. Hey, afternoon, everybody. I know this is a weird time for me to do a live stream, but I've got nothing better to do. I was getting bored of doing club histories and stuff today. There's a lot of research, and it just really made me very, very tired. And I've covered a lot since the last live stream. In the last few days, we have done a lot of videos when I can in the evenings. So I'm trying my best to keep on top of as much sporting content in as many sports as possible. Obviously, the World Cup in football or soccer, if you're American, is coming up. So the channel's going to be mostly focusing on that in the coming weeks. There will be other sports stories that I will cover. Obviously, the Champions League finals tonight at 6:45 UK time. Oh, hello. How you doing? I know it's really early for Americans. I know I'm 5 hours ahead of the East Coast. I'm 8 hours ahead of the West Coast. So for the fact you are still awake and you participate, it's great. I haven't done a live stream for a while. I've been doing my new job, but I'm glad you followed me on Twitter. Saw that ad. I followed you back. I haven't been able to watch all your videos because, well, I've been working, and when I get in, it's late. I'm up for like 16 hours a day. But I've covered a lot of sports. So I'm just going to go through everything I've covered quickly, and then I'll answer your hockey questions. I'm assuming you've got a lot of hockey questions. Obviously, the World Cup squads for the World Cup in Russia have been announced. Players have missed out. I covered some of the English players that missed out. There are some other players who are missing out through injury. I've done a lot of player profiles on cricketers primarily, but some rugby league players as well who've retired, who are in my favourite, like my Hall of Fame, if you will. What else have we covered? We've had a European Cup final, the Europa League, which is the secondary European Championship in club football last weekend. And the team I wanted to win won, which I was happy about. And I predicted a score for once in my life. Did a lot of coverage on that last week. Obviously, a lot of managers are signing, or as you were saying in the US, coaches are signing like contracts with their teams, be it rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey, what I would call football, what you would call soccer. So there's a lot of that happening right now. I've done a lot of player profiles on a lot of player profiles and players who've retired who I think will go into my various sporting Hall of Fames, my various starting team lineups. A bit of corruption. And I'll get onto your questions in a sec. As I say, I'm just going through all the videos I've done recently to update everyone on where we are. I've got a lot of notes. God, so many rugby players here. Cup finals, reaction videos. With that, whilst I'm getting to this point, with the reaction videos, copyright can be a bit of a pain in the backside, and I want to get remonetized. So I'm not sure if YouTube would like me doing that. React videos on this live. I will react to and give my views on sporting matches that on matches that I see, but reaction videos are not really my thing. It's not really my MO on the channel, but I've been asked to do that before, and I'm a little bit hesitant. I more focus on the sporting stories and the matches that I see, and then I give a review afterwards. Copyright, it may not be you, but the bot picks it up, and we're trying to get remonetized. But back to what I was discussing. I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's just not really something that would interest me. It's not my channel style. It's not my style. But I understand where you're coming from. It's not really my thing. Back to what I've been talking about. We've had a lot of over in the UK, unlike in the US, we have a lot of promotion relegation systems, and a lot of teams are going up and going down. So I've covered a lot of that. What else? I've covered a lot of European football. So Eintracht Frankfurt winning the German Cup final over Bayern Munich. That was a big story, and people and the German viewers are loving that, and people are watching a lot of that video, which is good. And there was the reaction of the Bayern Munich players wasn't so great. So that was a bit more of a story than it could have been. Again, a lot of players retiring from various sports. So if you follow cricket or if you're interested, AB de Villiers has just retired from international cricket. He's been a brilliant player, unorthodox. Star player, he's decided to call it a day, and I can't blame him. He's been playing professionally for 16 years at the highest level without a break, so I can't blame him in pretty much deciding. I've decided to move on. What else have we got? The NFL ruling on players who kneel during the anthem. Now, I know I'm not an American, so my views on American social issues are not valid, I suppose, as I lived there. I've never been there. But I find it interesting that if players want to protest about an issue, that a league is now taking a precedent where it's written into the rule book saying that if you do protest, you'll be fined. I think this could have the reverse effect that the NFL want. I think more players are now going to do it just to spite the NFL. And there is a collective bargaining agreement coming up in 2-3 years' time where I think that's going to be on the table. The players' union isn't very happy. It's more now a battle of, it's not what Colin Kaepernick did in the beginning. It's now more of a battle between the league and the players. And as we've seen with the NHL and the Major League Baseball, fans don't react well to millionaires and billionaires falling out with each other and going on strike and locking out. They don't react well. I think the NFL has put itself in a position whereby it didn't come out very clearly in the beginning, whether it's like right to protest or not. I understand why Colin Kaepernick did the protest. I think there are better ways they could have protested that issue. Print T-shirts, for example, stand in unison, all men of all colours. Protest outside Capitol Hill in the off-season. The kneeling in the anthem, it worked for like a few days, and now it's sort of been lost in translation in what's happening there. And the NFL coming out and doing that. The NFL is damaging itself more because I can see this backfiring on the NFL and the players going on strike. And I don't think the NFL can afford that kind of issue, especially with the international series and the issues over here in the UK with bringing the games over here. That was a story. I've been doing, obviously, team histories of the teams that I follow and other teams that I have seen play or have an interest in. And I'll be doing that for almost every sporting team you can think of over the summer because I'm going to be very, very bored after the World Cup for a couple of months before the ice hockey season starts again, the rugby league, rugby union. I'll be very, very bored. So I've started doing a lot of research on a lot of some of the teams maybe obscure to some. I know that some of the teams may be well known to some, but I've started with European football, so soccer as you'll call it in the US. But we're going to go on and cover rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey, various teams in ice hockey in leagues over here in Europe, and obviously the NHL. We're going to look at their career, like the team's histories, how many trophies they've won, how their league position, the history of it, star players, all sorts. This was the first one. My home, the team I've been supporting since '92. That's a lot of notes, and there's a lot of trophies, and there's a lot of bits and pieces in there. Wayne Rooney. Now, if you're American, obviously you've got the MLS. Wayne Rooney's in talks in America at the moment. It's a big story over here because he's a star English player who used to play for the national side. Big news, badly kept secret. He's going to be on big money. I think it'd be good for the MLS that he goes, and it might be good for him. Other people disagree. Another manager signing a contract extension. That's interesting. The NHL playoffs. Now, this is an interesting one. If you're an NHL fan, they are the most watched since 1997. The last time this many people viewed the NHL playoffs, Colorado Avalanche and the Detroit Red Wings were at the height of their hate-filled rivalry. So Vegas, that's been a good thing for the league. I think the Winnipeg Jets going far in the playoffs as well, that's been a good thing for the league because 11 million Canadians watched them at one point against Nashville. That's a third of Canadian people watched the Winnipeg Jets play the Nashville Predators in Game 7. I think the Washington Capitals finally getting back to a Stanley Cup final. Their last one was in 1998. That's clearly good for the league. So some of these good feel-good stories, these underdog stories, are really helping, I think, grow the fan base. Plus, 31 teams now, you've got an extra fan base in there. That's going to be more people viewing. So, but it's the most viewed since '97. So that's really interesting. I think that also includes people in the arenas as well. So, the game is at a crossroads, but it's a good stat to know. What else have we got? Right, let's go focus. We've had some world snooker. So if you follow the snooker or pool, there's been some match fixing allegations against several players. 3 players are suspended at the moment. 2 of them are inside the world's top 50. So in a sport like that, that's big news. Roddy O'Sullivan, the world's greatest ever player, has come out and has stated. And where have I put the notes down for this? Where did I put the notes down? I'll find my notes down. He has stated that he's not sure banning players for match fixing is necessarily the answer. But there was something else he stated in his interview. There is no players union in snooker. So if there are any issues with a player who's got a gambling problem, an alcohol problem, anything like that. There isn't that kind of fallback safety mechanism for the players to, have air their concerns and their views. Also, it means tournament organisers can be very unscrupulous with the prize money for various things. So that's an interesting thing that has come out today, which I've been following. Let's have a look at other ones I've got. Obviously, it's Champions League final tonight. So if you're interested in European football, Champions League final kicks off in 4 hours 45 minutes. I will be watching that and I will do a review after the game. So for 2 hours there'll be no videos going up on the channel because I will be watching the football online. I found a live stream so I can watch that for free. And that's pretty much a recap of the last week's worth of videos, really. So everyone should be up to speed now. Just get my notes sorted out for the next video. So I'm now open to questions about multiple sports and how I feel on things. I mean, I will be doing a live stream tomorrow night as well, 8 p.m. my time. So it'll be easier for people all around the world to watch because I know time zones are a pain in the arse. And there's a lot of sports that have been covered right now, and I'm happy to start taking questions. So whoever's watching, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and then I'll be more than happy to answer them. I mean, it is interesting, some of the things that are going on. So if you're a fan of pro cycling, Chris Froome is now winning the Giro d'Italia. That is a pain in the arse because he's not cleared his name for a supposed drug violation. I was hoping Simon Yates would win, but Simon Yates looks like he's just run out of energy, and that's a shame because he's a very young, talented cyclist. Obviously, got the Monaco Grand Prix tomorrow. I might watch that if it's on the telly. I like the Monaco street circuit. I like street circuits. They're far more challenging than most F1 circuits. It's one of the few races that I watch in the F1 is the Monaco Grand Prix because it really is a test of driver skill, that one. You can have a slightly slower car and actually still win it, and I've seen some great races at Monaco. So that's interesting. But yeah, I'm out open to questions. So if you've got any questions, throw them in. Feel free to ask away. I mean, I don't want to drone on about about stuff really. I mean, I'd rather you guys whack me some questions my way to do a sport, and then I'm more than happy to answer them. I mean, I cover every sport you can think of, really. I mean, I've had some fan requests lately, and they are interesting, some of the requests, and I will get to all requests in time. When I'm researching a team's history or a player's career, it takes a good while to get all the notes down and look through all their stats and their trophies and their achievements, and it does take a while to do that research, and so that is a labour of love, I suppose. But at the same time, I like having ideas for videos. When there's a discussion I was that Tim Cahill got picked ahead of McLaren because he. Now, if Tim Cahill has been selected because of corporate stuff, that is a problem. I don't like that. Tim Cahill is going to retire after this World Cup. We know this. He's definitely retiring. There's a lot of players going to this World Cup who are going to retire at the end of the tournament. It's like Iniesta, for example, Tim Cahill. There's a few others floating around who this is their last tournament. They're going to, call it a day at the end. If Tim Cahill got picked ahead of another player because there's Catalex ad campaign, if he's got in there because of a corporate sponsorship deal, that's wrong. I think the players should be chosen on their ability and who's proven, who's got the best form, who fits into the squad, who fits into the system. Yes, Tim Cahill is a leader of the team, but he's well past his best level, of playing level. He's now right at the end of his career. So for me, if he got selected for that reason, that is wrong. For his leadership abilities, I would have him in a squad, no doubt about that. But if that is the case, if that is true, and that's not just something that someone's made up or a rumor, that is concerning. But we need to validate that before, because over here we don't get to hear about the Australian sport as much unless it's an Australian sportsman playing here or has played here, or a British sportsman playing out there. It doesn't get covered as much. But I would feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, the facts have to be validated, and this is where the media needs to take responsibility for some of the stories it publishes and some of the stories it leads with, because when they give out false information like that, or if it could be false, that could be damaging for the sport itself. Australian sport right now has had a lot of problems. It's not just the cricket. Israel Folau is really deciding to annoy a lot of people. And there's issues with his contract as well. And some of the speculation around that's not right. Um, the A-League Grand Final with the VAR failing. I liked your comment, vodka-assisted referees. That worried me going to a World Cup, that the three countries trialling VAR, only the Germans are sending officials. So that worries me if there's a VAR failure. Only the Germans are the only officiating team that have used it for a whole year, a whole season. That's a concern that I would have as a fan of sport. If you're trialing something, surely you should take the officials that have been working with the trialed tech or the trial rules to that tournament. Um, whether an Australian or I mean, we've got some very, very good English referees that haven't gone. I think Michael Oliver should have gone because he's refed the FA Cup final. He's refereed in Europe. Okay, Buffon did sort of try and punch him, but he has refed in pressure cooker situations and got the decisions mostly right. I do find it funny that FIFA have only decided to select out of all the officiating pool German referees who use VAR rather than English and Australians as well. I think that's a mistake. I think that's a problem going forward. But I don't know what else I could really add to that really. But it is what it is. I mean, we can debate whether that is a true story. If it does come out that that is the reasons why, and it causes issues within the Australian squad, then it becomes more of a problem. We know the Australians aren't going to win the World Cup necessarily. We can all dream that we want a nation to win or a player to shine. But if a player has been chosen for corporate reasons over the actual playing reasons, I don't know how good McLaren is. I mean, I don't know how old he is. I don't really follow the Australian A-League, but that is a worry for me that a player is in there. I've also seen a lot more of these in the World Cup year or Euros year. I don't know what what it. Yes, Albert Park. I'm not a big fan of Albert Park. I've watched on TV obviously the F1 and the V8 Supercars. I'm not a big fan of Albert Park. I think it is a lot wider. There is a lot more runoff. I don't think it's the most challenging circuit of a street circuit because I've seen the World Touring Car Championships. I've seen other single seater Formula or GT Formula do. Like Macau is a challenge that regularly causes problems for crashes. I'm not sold on Albert Park as the best street circuit. I think they could look at adjusting it slightly, making it a bit tougher, but there's a reason why it makes a loss as well. It's making a loss year on year as well. So there's issues with F1 with the contract signed by when Bernie Ecclestone was in charge, and now Liberty Media have taken over. Silverstone has been screwed out of the F1 after next season. We're not sure if they might do a London street circuit. I don't know how that's going to work and where they'll put it, simply because of, do they do it by Hyde Park so the pit lane can be in Hyde Park? Do they do it because the Formula E has gone to London, so they could use a similar street plan for what the Formula E is. I mean, they do it in Azerbaijan and Baku. Now, I'm not a big fan of that circuit either. I do like street circuits though, but I'm not sold on some of them. I'm not sold on whether it does until 2019, and then Silverstone loses the rights. So after 2019, there's rumours London maybe in 2020 gets a street circuit for the British Grand Prix until a permanent solution can be found. Donington isn't up to scratch. It was meant to replace Silverstone, and then that deal completely collapsed due to funding. There was issues with people who owned the racetrack at the time. Really got themselves in a hole. They sold off the Dunlop Bridge, which I thought was sacrilege. Absolutely disgraceful. They sold off the Dunlop Bridge to try and make money. They were selling off bits of the memorabilia of Donington to try and patch up the massive cavernous black hole that was their finances. I think the MotoGP doesn't even race at Donington anymore. The touring cars and the superbikes still do, but it's not the track it was. The new owners of Donington have done a lot to try and fix the issues. They've increased the stands. They've worked on resurfacing sections. But Donington was meant to replace Silverstone back in like 2008, 2009. And that all fell through. It all completely collapsed. It all went horribly wrong. And that was a problem. No, there's other things going on. British motorsport. We've had Shaky Byrne, the British Superbike champion, had a crash at Snetterton in testing last week and broke his back, his ribs, his neck, bruised both his lungs. He was very lucky not to be paralysed. So the dangers of motorsport come to the fore. And Snetterton is one of the greatest circuits in this country. I think it doesn't get the coverage it deserves. It's got some they've changed the layout of Snetterton. But no, British motorsport is in an interesting phase at the moment with bits and pieces. We will have to see what happens post Silverstone. We know until 2019 Silverstone has the F1 rights. After that, there's rumours that there will be a street circuit in London. Whether that will be successful or not, I don't know. A lot of sports fans in this country complain about how London-centric sport is, with the finals, with international rugby and international football, and occasionally international rugby league. There is a concern that there's too much happening in London, and other areas of the country aren't really getting to see the best players at times. So whether they decide to build a brand new circuit or find another circuit to host the F1, we will see. We do have a good tradition, yes, we do. But Shaky Byrne's accident was in testing. We don't know what fully happened. He just was seriously injured. He's lucky to not be paralysed. So the British Superbikes, we've had a great tradition of motorsport in this country, and it continues to do so. It's the way the circuits have been handled is wrong. It's the way that the deal for Silverstone and the F1 has not benefited Silverstone. The deal to get Donington fell through because, again, checks and balances were not properly checked, basically. So money-wise, a lot of problems. Other circuits have been modified. Alton Park and Thruxton. Thruxton's my local circuit. That's near me. And then you've got Castle Combe. Thruxton's the fastest circuit in the UK, and it's too dangerous to have. If they were to get Thruxton as an F1 circuit, that's a lot of modifications because it's one of the most dangerous circuits in the world. It makes Imola look safe. The asphalt is very abrasive on tyres, so the tyres will just not last. We have this issue in the touring cars where they normally come with a soft compound and a hard compound. They can't do that in the touring cars because the tyres will explode. Motorcycle racing is a lot more open than F1. But I like touring cars because the cars are pretty equal in power and suspension and aero. So it comes more down to driver skill. That's what the F1 wants to do with the new Liberty Media Group that owns it. And a lot of the teams, such as Mercedes and Ferrari, who have got so used to winning and the greed, don't want to actually change the rules to make it a more balanced competition. Some of the smaller teams actually having a chance to get at the front. The F1 teams are in a battle with the owners of F1 rights, Liberty Media. And John Tott, who's in charge of the FIA, used to be Ferrari's technical director. So you can see what's going to happen here. There's going to be a fudge. I've gone off F1 a long time ago. And it's sad. I used to love watching F1. I've gone off it a long time ago. There's very few races that I will actively watch the highlights for or watch. I've really stopped following. There's a lot of structural issues in the governance of the sport, and I think the cars have become basically computers, which a guy sits in and occasionally steers. I think there's too much runoff area. The circuits aren't as challenging as they used to be. It's like watching paint dry. Liberty Media are trying to bring in these things similar to NASCAR. They make it all the cars have an even chance of winning, and it's a bit more wheel to wheel. And some of the bigger teams don't want to do it. Which I think is silly because the bigger teams that have their own engines like Renault, Ferrari, Mercedes and Honda, those engine suppliers could supply more teams and make more money. I don't understand some of the bigger teams not wanting to evolve the sport to get more spectators. That's another problem. A lot of people are switching off. The grid girls argument, if that was sexist, why are the girls applying to do it then? I don't see any. I think that's these ultra feminists who completely lost a sight of what empowerment means. And politics and sport should try and stay as separate as possible. And it's very, very hard. If you look at the NFL, and you commented on the NFL, no, Minardi's, Sauber's on a budget. You could say Caterham. Manor Racing, which was the last budget team to go out of business. There were a few teams that were on a budget. I think the way the revenue sharing works is not right either. It's an American-owned company now, so the revenue sharing will probably be equal for all teams, and the big teams don't like that. The big teams don't want to share the toys, and that's going to kill the sport. The sport is slowly going down, and people are switching off. They're getting bored. They find it antiseptic. If you like motorsport, you want to see it wheel to wheel from lap 1 to lap 70, or depending how long the race is. You want to see them bash body panels off each other. That's why I like NASCAR, because NASCAR, they're literally, the body panels are all battered and cars will come in with tape all over them and missing fenders. And people go, well, you're British, how can you watch NASCAR? Because they go faster than F1. They have less downforce, less grip, but the tyres can do a longer stint, and it's normally solved on the track rather than the pit lane, and there's more overtaking, more action. Accidents are a big thing, but the cars are very, very safe. They learn very quickly from deaths, rather than where F1 more reactionary. NASCAR, you get it wrong, you're in the wall. And their cars are tough, and they don't have a lot of tech on them. They literally are driver skill and mechanical grip, and that is beautiful. When you see the most basic cars that are doing 210 mile an hour on banked turns, or even on the road track such as Watkins Glen, when they are doing 200 something mile an hour down a straight, that is amazing to watch when they're wheel to wheel. And if we're talking millimeters apart, you could not do that in F1 because the way the aero package works. In NASCAR, it works because of the aero package. And NASCAR's got issues, don't get me wrong. NASCAR's not a perfect motorsport, but good God, it's fun to watch. I like watching motocross as well, because again, you can have a guy come from the back who rides the track, because it's a dirt track, very, very well. I like watching rally driving. Again, you can see an outsider do very, very well and get on a podium or get a win, because you're more likely to crash, and it's a real test of driver skill. F1, there's too much tech. You've got the boost button, you've got the DRS. It's the same with IndyCar. You just press the boost button and go a bit faster. You use the DRS to increase or reduce downforce or wind resistance. And it's a little bit, he's using tech to win. Why not use mechanical grip, pure horsepower, and a good stiff chassis with a couple of mods on it? Simple. I'm not a big fan of the current. Yeah, it's basically like the gay car in Knight Rider. Yes, kit. Yes, that's basically what it is, and it ruins the spectacle a little bit. And Liberty Media want to take it the other way a little bit, make it a bit more even across the whole playing field. And the big teams don't want to play ball. It's the same with the TV sharing revenues in the English Premier League, where the big six clubs want to get as greedy as possible and make sure the smaller clubs can never challenge them, which is not healthy for a sport. A sport needs a healthy competition. If you don't have a healthy competition, a league or a sport will struggle to attract fans. Simple. If you have the same teams winning over and over again, it gets boring for everyone else, because their team or their player or their athlete they support can never have a chance. It does get dull. And it puts people off. If you have a very healthy competition where every team has a chance of winning or every player has a chance of playing, it's more interesting and more people will buy in. It's simple logic, really. There was a guy near where I live in England who had the DeLorean from Back to the Future, and he'd done a whole body kit that actually was the DeLorean Back to the Future car. It was all road legal as well, and he was selling it. And then I said, "Well, how much are you asking?" He said, "Not a lot." I said, "Why?" He said, "It doesn't work." So what do you mean it doesn't work? And he was like, "All the electrics have failed, and I can't be asked to rewire them. It's just now as a showpiece." Because DeLoreans were the worst cars in the world. Aston Villa Fulham, this is a good question. Right, I've drowned on about motorsport long enough. Aston Villa Fulham, this is a very, very good question, because the playoff final now for the Championship is the wealthiest game in club football. It makes more money for the winner than the Champions League final. It makes more money than the FA Cup final, Europa League. Any other club final, it makes the most money. I'm not 100% certain. I think Villa, they need to look at what went wrong in the Premier League beforehand. So if they go back up, they need to go, well, hey, why did we get relegated? Same with Fulham. They both need to go, right, okay, do we actually have the push to get there? I would actually rather see Aston Villa go up. The reason why I don't want Fulham to go up is because their owner wants to buy Wembley, and I have a lot of concerns about that proposed sale. and that surely is a conflict of interest. A few of my mates are Fulham fans. Good little club, not knocking Fulham. They have got to a European final. Villa have obviously won a European final in the past. Both historical clubs, both have had world class players play for them over the years they've been in existence. Villa's a founder of the Football League. It is an interesting one. It would be nice to see Fulham Chelsea rivalry again, because I think Chelsea need that kick up the arse. But I'm not 100% certain he's going to win. I think it might go to penalties. I honestly think it might go to penalties. I want to see Jack Grealish though in the Premier League again, because I think he did not get enough game time when he was in the Premier League last, and English football needs more of these young players coming through. I'd have to go for a Villa win. I have links to the West Midlands, family links, so I would go for a Villa win. Not that I particularly like Villa, but I want to see players like Jack Grealish play in the Premier League again. I'm not sure either club will stay up, though. That's another issue, because what happened with Villa last time when they got relegated and they were that outplayed in that FA Cup final and they had that such a lengthy decline for so long. They need to. Sorry about that. They need to look at why they got relegated in the first place. They need to understand what went wrong. So we'll have to see what happens with Villa. Fulham, I'm not sure if they actually will have enough to say up either. It'll be interesting, but I do think both sides, if either side gets up, they have to seriously learn the lessons of the last time they were in the Premier League. And Villa were stagnating for too long and declining, and then they weren't doing well in the transfer market. So it's interesting, but I want to see Jack Grealish back in the Premier League. And if he does get back in the Premier League, will Villa possibly sell him to invest back into the club? I don't know. It'd be nice for Villa to win, because obviously J. Lloyd Samuel passing away last week. That might be a fitting way to send him off. And Jack Grealish, I know he's played for Ireland, he's played for England. I'm not sure if England have dealt with him very well when he was originally in the Premier League, which was, I think, just before the Euros 2 years ago. I think he could have been selected, being that unknown factor that a lot of the European teams may not have seen. I don't know. I think he's not been well handled at Villa at times. Bison. Yes, the Basing. I think Basingstoke, Bison, I think this is their last season coming up. Looking at everything that I've read online about the team and their state of their rink, I've got one of my manager at work. He plays for the Guildford Rec team. His partner, she plays for the Basingstoke women's team that got to the finals. I think with so many key players from that good side last year moving on, some have gone back to the import players. A lot of them are leaving. I do worry about that team long term. I'm surprised they made it to this season coming up. I thought last season was going to be the end for them. Clearly, the players know the writings on the wall. That all they're guaranteed is at least 1 year in a crumbling rink, which could fall down on them at any time. The league-winning coach going. You've got 6 of your best players have left in the last week, more possibly to follow. No signings been announced. That doesn't fill me with confidence. There's no major signings been announced. Other teams have already announced the first handful of signings, some of them named after team by now. There's a lot of movement with free agents. There's a lot of players who've either played in the Elite League or the National League that are willing to move around, pick a new team. Basingstoke having a mass exodus, because I think the players and the owners realise the rink writing is on the wall. I think this is their last year. Whether Winchester gets their rink built quick enough and Slough can accommodate the women's team, because there are talks, the women's team are in talks with Slough playing there and changing name, moving there. We'll have to see. Yes, Jack Grealish, he has chosen England for now, but it's whether England select him. If England don't select him and he plays really well in this playoff final, gets the Premier League, plays really well next year, then that's more full in England. I think Gareth Southgate maybe he's not the manager to lead England forward. But this World Cup, we'll have to see what happens. The fact Harry Kane's been named captain, I'm a bit sceptical about that. So there's a few issues that are concerned that I have about the World Cup and selection of players and players not being selected, such as John Joe Shelby. I mean, he may not be everyone's cup of tea, but look how he's played for Newcastle for the last 6 months. He's played really, really well. He's stepped up. He's learned from Benitez. Benitez has had a lot of faith in him, giving him game time, not even on the standby list. And I think the club you play for, if it's not attractive enough, you don't get selected, which I think is wrong. I think they need to select on form, not who they play for. And there's too many Tottenham players in this England squad that have proven they choke in big games. So we'll have to see. I don't think Harry Kane is the best bet as captain. He's won no silverware as a player, apart from a golden boot. So we'll see if he can be the right person who can lead on the pitch, because I don't see him as a very good public speaker somehow as well. Panama. I think Panama. Will pose a lot of problems for England. They're very good on the set piece. They're quite a tall team as well. They're a physical team, um, and they're an unknown. And the way England play, they are suited. If we play it with pace on the counter attack, we're fine. But I don't think Panama are going to allow us to play on the counter attack. I think Panama are going to be there. Two banks of forward in midfield and defence, two strikers up front. Not necessarily a high press, but a pressing midfield. And England are going to, the pace of the game will slow down, and that will suit Panama. I think England will have problems because the way Southgate plays, he sets up for counter attack, and then the players play really slowly and too measured, and they just aimlessly pass it about with no actual cutting pass. That's why Cameroon first played in 1990, Italia 90. They got through with Roger Miller scoring his goal, and they beat Argentina, not 94. What else we got? Benitez. I think Benitez would make a decent international manager. Whether it be England, I don't know. But he's never gone into the international foray. He's always been a club manager. So it doesn't always transcend success at club level to success at international level, and vice versa. You got to look at Chris Coleman with Wales. Very successful. Really improved them. Really got them playing at a higher level. Not just Gareth Bale, who's a superstar, but all the players buying in. Goes to Sunderland, falls apart. So Benitez is a very good manager. I think he does get a lot of criticism, which I think is unfair, mostly from Chelsea fans who I think I'm not a big fan of Chelsea. I mean, I've got a lot of friends who are Chelsea fans and a few subscribers, so I'm not going to slag off all the fan base, but there are some Chelsea fans who are very, very visceral online. There are some fan bases that have a really nasty minority of vile fans who just wind me up, but that's something else. Yes, I did read the league statement on the fact that this year only one more team will get promoted in the north and one will get relegated, and then from next season, so 2019-2020, there'll be no more promotion relegation, and the teams have to be apply, and the other teams have to accept or decline. I think that's a better way to go. I think that means they're giving faith to Cardiff and they're giving them a bit of a push. It's a shame the Oxford City size didn't go up, but they've got no plexiglass. They've only got netting around the boards, which may have held them back as well. Yes, it would have been nice to see the Silent Devils up. I think that's where Basingstoke probably end up is the Devils rink, and they merge the clubs together, and so you'll have a Devils 1 and a Devils 2. I think that's possibly where they end up. It is interesting, but we have this discussion every off season. It's like the Elite League; they're going to go ahead with 11 teams. Hull have been given a deferment, partly to do with their rink. So the Hull Pirates are staying in the National League, not going to the Elite League for now. And they're given a 24-month deferment. So within the next 2 years, they have to meet all the criteria. They had a good healthy discussion with the Elite League management, and so for now they're staying put. And I think, as I said, the video I did on the Elite League will they invite another team up to replace will be interesting going forward in a couple of years' time. I think at Bracknell they need to refurb the rink a little bit. I think Hull have the rink, and they've had a team there before in the Elite League. Sheffield have two teams, so whether the Steel Dogs go up, that'd be interesting if that was considered. Sheffield is the hotbed of English ice hockey. There's several options open to the Elite League, but they decided to stick with 11 for now. We don't know why the Murrayfield races were declined on the offer they put forward. They're obviously the Elite League had their reasons for not being happy with the offer that was put forward by the ownership group of Murrayfield. The Edinburgh Capitals, what's the point in keep propping up a team that regularly fails? They've only had one season where they had a winning record in their entire existence since the league was formed. That's just, and the rink they are playing at, built in 1938. and is showing its age, and the facilities aren't great. So if you're a visiting team or a visiting fan, you're going to some place that is, probably older than your grandparents. It predates World War II, so that's an issue. Is the arena they play in? There are other options open. We'll have to see what happens at the end of next season. But this is every off season. We go into an off season not knowing if the team is going to exist, and that's a problem. Yes, I do remember Cameroon in '94, but I was still a baby in 1990. But I've seen the highlight reels of Roger Miller's goals and Cameroon beating Argentina. '94 was the first World Cup I watched, and I've watched every World Cup since. I've watched like 90% of the games at World Cups since 1994. And I'll be watching as many as possible in this World Cup. And the channel will be covering a lot of the World Cup games, and I'll do the results, videos, and I'll give my reviews and my thoughts and things like that. I'll try and cover as many games as possible. I won't be able to cover all of them. It depends where I'm working. It depends. Depends what I'm doing. Depends on family and all sorts. But I'll try my best to cover as many of the games as possible. 82. I was in Spain. This is where politics and football's got and sports will be careful, because in '78 they went to Argentina, and in Argentina at the time there was a military government, and there were concerns about that. '82 was just after Franco had passed away. There was political issues in Spain at the time. Again, concerns. Was it appropriate? I went back to Mexico in '86 after being there in 1970. Again, military government at the time in 1970. There were concerns that. So for some reason, the World Cup likes to go to places which have a lot of controversy about them and not very nice governments in charge. Now they're in Russia, and there's concerns there. It's a running trend with football. I have a lot of World Cup knowledge, which is insane. I have a lot of books, books and programs and DVDs and videos. The concern I have with this World Cup is several. VAR, that's going to be a talking point. If it fails in the first game, let's say, I can't remember who Russia played in the first game. If it fails on opening night, that will be embarrassing for FIFA. If it works, okay, there could be controversy with that. Then you've got to look at the political backdrop at the moment with what's going on. That's getting a bit iffy. And then you've got to look at the size of the country that they're going to and the travel distances. Now, the US in '94 coped with that very well. Brazil did rather well 4 years ago, actually. Let's not knock Brazil for what they did in the World Cup 4 years ago, the distances between stadiums. I think the weather conditions were up for questioning, like playing in Manaus in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and the humidity. But again, Brazil did pull it off. The one positive Russia has in this World Cup is all the stadiums are ready on time. In fact, most of the stadiums were ready last year. The Confederations Cup went rather well. There were no real issues. Or not all the stadiums were sold out, but it's a smaller tournament. But the practice tournament, as we'll call it, the Confederations Cup, went pretty much without a hitch. The pitches held up well. The stadiums are brilliant. The media said that the facilities at the stadiums were good. So on that front, all is looking well. We've got to look at fan accommodation, travel, fan zones, safety, all that kind of stuff. And that's something that will be another issue coming up. But it is worth a debating point. It is worth it. No. Yes. There again, the political side of it. The British Foreign Office, and I'm sure the Australian Foreign Office has given out the same kind of advice: stick to the fan zone, stick to the official routes to the stadium by taking public transport. Do not walk, do not drive. Stick to your hotel. Don't stray too far off the beaten path. I think that's just pretty standard, fare if you're a sports fan abroad, is just obey the local customs. Don't piss off the locals. The locals may try and piss you off, but don't piss off the locals. The MH17 thing, again, that's political. That's there is political issues between Ukraine and Russia and the Crimea and eastern Ukraine. That's a lot of political goings on. So the political side of it is a problem. Hopefully, the sport does the talking for the next 6 weeks when the tournament's on, and we don't have to discuss too much of the politics. But it's not going to go away. I don't know how many fans from each country are going. I think the allocations are about 10,000. Um, I don't know. I don't think the Russians can afford any more bad press. Really, I think they want it to be a showpiece event like the Moscow Olympics in 1980. I think they don't want any more issues than there already is. I think they'll probably do the opposite. I think they'll probably do the opposite um, because they're now on the world. They look at the Sochi Olympics. They didn't really harass athletes. They let them do their thing, even though the Ukraine was happening. The Sochi Olympics in 2014, they didn't delay any athletes at all. They let them in. Yeah, they were all cheating, but they didn't, deliberately obstruct athletes and officials and fans. They didn't. It's a showpiece event. It's the biggest sporting tournament in the world. It will be pretty stupid for the Russians to do that. I think it's going to be strange though. If anyone misbehaves, though, there's a difference. They have hosted Champions League finals before in Moscow in 2008 when Chelsea played Man United, and fans, Russian police, and the FA and the British police warned fans not to misbehave because a Russian prison is not a nice place. The issue I have is fans will misbehave. We've seen a rise in football violence around the world to do with fans, otherwise known as hooligans or ultras or firms, depending on what slang around the world you use, getting involved in more punch-ups. And I can only think that they're preparing themselves for the World Cup. We've seen it across Europe. We've seen it domestically here in the UK. I know there's been a spate of them in Australia as well. We've seen it in South America. All the various thugs are getting ready to have a battle with the Russians. And of course, the Germans are going to this World Cup. The Poles are going to this World Cup. That's going to be interesting. Very, very toxic environment. The Foreign Office advice is basically don't piss off the locals. If you're gay or of ethnic minority, it's basically advice you don't go. Because they basically said hide your gayness. It's like, so if you are of same-sex relationship extraction or you are of black or brown skin, it's probably advised you don't go. That's an issue. There has been racist chanting at Russian football games in Europe this season. It's a problem. I feel sorry for the African teams and some of the Asian teams that are going because they are probably going to get a lot of racist abuse. And those players are ethnic minorities who are going. But if you are gay or black or Asian or Aboriginal or whatever you want, don't go simply. I think the Russians will not necessarily impede the other teams. I think again, this is a showpiece event. This is Putin's tournament. His picture's going to be everywhere. I don't think they're going to try and impede. What I do think will happen. Well, there will be. We'll have to see. I think the politics needs to sort of stay out of it. I'm afraid, and unfortunately, it can't. It's got so blurred right now that it's his diplomacy. The actual politicians and diplomats can't do it. The sport's going to have to do it. If the sport can do the diplomacy, we shall see. It's going to be an interesting tournament. I think on the footballing standpoint and politics aside, I think the travel distances will be interesting. The team that can deal best with the long travel distances from base camp to especially in the group stage, and then once you get past the group stage, it gets all mental after that. They're going to be in good stead if they can also deal with the weather conditions. Now, European summers right now it's 25 degrees outside here in England. Very humid though. It's not the warmest day we've had in summer ever, but it's a very humid outside. So thunderstorms are going to happen. Torrential thunderstorms that will just spring up like that. They could last 5 minutes. They could last 5 hours. The distances as well, and the heat. It gets very hot. Russian steppe gets up to 40 degrees. The heat is going to take a massive toll. So it's going to be interesting to see what players can adapt the best. Russia is an interesting football as a country. Yes, they have underachieved. They've got to, I think, 2 European Championship finals as the USSR. Once in 19, I think it was 64 or 60 with Lev Yashin in goal, or 68. I think it was 68 with Lev Yashin in goal, and they got to the European finals in 88 against the Dutch. They got to World Cup semi-final in 1966 and lost to the Germans with Beckenbauer just shredding them from midfield. But on the main, they have underachieved, yes. For a country that size, yes, they have underachieved. They are the lowest ranked team in this tournament as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they do and how they get out the tour. If they get out the group stage, they have to. If they don't, I think Putin will probably have the whole team shot. But um, if it's like when the South Africans had the World Cup, they didn't get out the group stage. That never happened before. A host has always got out the group stage, so it will be interesting. But yes, they have underachieved for a very, very long time when it comes to international football. Club football, they haven't. Club football, they've actually had some very good teams like St. Petersburg and CSK and Spartak and Torpedo Moscow and things like that. They've had some very good club teams. Portugal now have actually won an international trophy. They won the Euros 2 years ago. So for me, they have gone far in tournaments. They have got the semi-finals. They have got the finals. They lost the Euros 2004 in their home country to Greece, but they deserve to lose that for me. Portugal haven't underachieved as much as the Russians have, because you've got to look at the size of Portugal's population and for club level, they've had some very good teams: Benfica, Sporting, Braga. They've got some good teams in Portugal. I think Porto, they've won the Champions League, they've won the Europa League in Europe, they won the Winners' Cup back in the day. They've got some very, very good club sides. They've had some very good players. They've had some very good managers. This isn't a very good Portuguese side at the moment. It hasn't been since Luis Figo and Maniche and Deco 10, 15 years ago. The side they have now is not as good as the side they had then. You take Ronaldo out of it, they're an average mid-table, as I'll call it, mid-table league side. If you think about it, when it comes to international level, they're a solid average side. You put Ronaldo in, they get to a decent side. And even then, Ronaldo doesn't always play his best for Portugal either. I think it could be the tactics they impose. It could be the style of football that they did, the coaching setup, and the Portuguese FA want them to play, the culture. There could be a multitude of reasons. But they have had some very great players play for them over the decades. We have to see whether they can step up and actually unearth another hidden talent, because they've had some very good players. Back in 2004, that Euros, and 2006, they had a multitude of world-class players. Now, Quaresma's underachieved his whole career. Ronaldo, club level, was brilliant. International level was only won the one trophy and didn't do much in the final 2 years ago because he went off injured and had a very poor tournament and wasn't fully fit. They've had some good goalkeepers, but again, they have all these good players and then they fall flat. This is the issue. When it comes to talking about the biggest sport in the world, the most popular sport in the world, some teams really do fall flat. I mean, look at England. I've noticed something about England. From the 80s till the early 2000s, very good sides. Very good sides. There were a couple of blip years, like 92 in the Euros, we were terrible. 94, we didn't qualify for the World Cup. So the 8 days of the Premier League, we were shit as a national side. But for the most part, very good. There's a reason for that. A lot of English players were playing in Europe and abroad. That's not happening at the moment. Not enough good young players are being scouted by European clubs going, we'll take a chance on a young English winger or a young English centre forward or a midfielder or a defender or a goalkeeper. We're not taking the chance. In years past, when the team has been good, a lot of English players have played in Europe. So from the 70s through to the mid-noughties, so the 25, 30-year period, a lot of English players were playing in Europe. Now, not the case. There are a few floating around in the MLS, and there's a few floating around in Europe, but not as many as previous years. And those that aren't, I've already said they've retired from international football. So we're not getting the best out of them. Playing a different style, a different culture, playing different tactics, playing under different managers, learning a different. No. And I think the national side's worse off for that. You could say that, yes. Oh, yes. The amateur referee. That was due to an amateur league set up by those of Turkish descent. So it's a local Turkish community in London have set up their own amateur league, and that's covered by the London Football Association, which is the county association, which is a member of the FA. That is pretty bad. Pretty bad if I want to say something. But there's a lot of referees leaving the game. A lot of young coaches are leaving the game. there is a reason why coaches and officials don't want to get involved in the game, and that's part of it. There's been a rise in attacks on officials, and it's really stupid because rugby doesn't happen, cricket doesn't happen, ice hockey. Okay, there's occasionally a player that may give a bit too much crap to an official, but again, doesn't really happen. Football, it's not just a British problem. It's a cultural thing that's seeping into all levels of the game around the world. Um, but these are Brits. These are British Turks who are second, third generation. So their fathers or grandfathers came over. They run the local corner shop. They run the local kebab shop, taxi firm. They're entrepreneurial businessmen. A lot of them are Kurds as well. And for them, this is that they want to integrate society. But the reaction, there were a handful of the players and those watching the game who did, yeah, not all the players. There was one of the players tried to defend the referee and he got kicking as well. It is a complete. I mean, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or it's just a sport-wide problem, but it's becoming more and more, common that players are getting aggressive with referees. Fans are definitely visceral bunch. And yeah, I think it shames the game, not just in this country where I live, but around the world. Um, so, and with the rise of social media and some of the abuse that officials are receiving on social media, it's a worrying trend that some idiot will see the abuse or the threats on social media and act upon it. And that is a concern that transcends whatever sport. I can be critical of said player or said team or said transfer policy, but that's not me going, this team is a complete and utter. Certain individuals in sport, yeah, I will go, this guy's not right, but I would never ever say, yeah, kill the ref. Some people on social media have put death threats to officials, death threats to players, and they get it on a daily basis now. 10, 20 years ago, didn't really happen. You would have, yes, I mean, Neil Lennon, ex-Celtic player, because of the political situation in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland with Catholics and Protestants and the sectarian, he got sent bullets in the post. Players and officials have had bombs put onto their cars in Scottish football. It does happen. And there are some leagues that are worse for it, such as the Turkish league. That that has happened. But I think social media is dangerous because it takes one idiot to see a comment on a Twitter feed, on Instagram or Facebook, and act upon it. And that is a real concern. And with the way society's going at the moment, it's seeming more and more likely that people will act upon something and do something stupid. And it's damaging for the game, and it's damaging, for development, because we have issues with lack of child participation in sport, lack of adult participation in sport, some attendances falling in the lower levels, teams having to fold because they can't recruit enough players at amateur level, and so that we'll have to give up now. So it's a problem. Croatia, yeah, there's some of it is politically motivated as well between ethnic groups, and it's an aftermath of some of the conflicts in the Balkans or in the Middle East, where some of these ethnic groups come from, nationalities come from, and they take their apprentices that their parents have with them. I know there's a very big Balkan population in Australia. A lot of the Australian national side could play for Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia. A lot of them could. Melbourne has a gang culture anyway. You must know about the mafia, the Melbourne gang wars for the previous 25 years. I mean, there is rumours that with Stephen Dank, someone trying to assassinate him, that the Melbourne gang killings may start again. There's a big issue between, I think, the Italian community as well, and Croatian and Albanians, and then there's a lot going on in Melbourne because there's a lot of organised criminals living in Melbourne of various ethnic and political backgrounds, and that has an effect as well. And I don't know. I mean, I know a lot about the Melbourne gang wars because I'm a big crime buff. I like my crime history. I like my sporting history. And there's a big link between the Italian, Australian mafia, the 'Ndrangheta, and the Sicilian population, in Melbourne, and then you've got the Balkan minority groups in Melbourne as well, and the Lebanese, and then you have a rather large Irish descended or working class British descended area in Melbourne because it's a port, and there is a big issue with organised crime and possibly sport in the Melbourne area. I I am aware of, yes, banning ethnic club names. There's a big Greek population. I mean, I remember as a kid the film Strictly Ballroom, and obviously he's of British descent. She's of, I think, Greek or Turkish or Albanian or Balkan descent, and they obviously, you know, meet as a dance partner group, and they go on, and that is actually, I think, based in the Melbourne area. That film, and it does talk about ethnicity in Australian society to Strictly Ballroom. Great film, great film. One of my top 10 films of all time. People tend to forget that film was made because they focus on Muriel's Wedding, the other Australian film. Um, oh, bless. Oh, we have a troll. Oh, dear. But at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. I mean, we we can debate, like, variety of things, but uh, you know it is what it is, really. I mean, I myself, I've got friends of oh, look, this guy who really just does not want to go away. Oh, well, but it is what it is. Like, I I'm quite happy to discuss a lot of issues with things. I mean, Melbourne has a big, yeah, issue with gang violence, and there was a period of time, I think, between the mid nine I think, what was it, the 90s, and a 10-15 year period where there was a spate of killings. Um, I don't know what else you really can do about that. But yeah, you've asked me to research a few of the sports teams around Melbourne. I will be getting to that. There is, I've started doing my club histories on teams, and I'm focusing on football clubs at the moment. We'll go on to rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey, uh, cricket, and various things like that, and we'll get there eventually. But it is interesting that they used to be teams of ethnic minority, background, Hellas and Albion Turk, playing in Melbourne, and that surprises me. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of the Phoenix, never watched it, but it is what it is. Um, I think I've watched a lot of documentaries on criminal history and gangs, and I've watched a lot of films. I mean, I like Goodfellas and Once Upon a Time in America and things like that. I find them really interesting, and you've got to look at the concern. Okay, here's one for you. The concerns that a lot of people have with Vegas getting the NHL team they have was the organised crime element to Vegas, which is not as bad as it used to be. But they've had a vote in the US Senate about legalizing gambling. In American sport, the Russell Street bombings and the Thai and air killings of people. I I've heard of the Russell Street bombings. I didn't know about the ambush where two police officers were gunned down. Um, but it is interesting how a city such as Melbourne, and we have the same over here in England with London and a rise in knife crime and stuff like that. That you know, it's interesting the social side of it, and sport could be a great social equaliser. That's my personal opinion. Sport can be a very great social equaliser. Um, I mean, the late '80s. I was born in the late '80s. I was a baby in '89. But I would say that time. There was a lot of social change going on, a lot of things going on in the sporting world as well. Um, a lot of things going on. Well, I mean, there's a lot of culture with rugby union in this country, amateur level, with a lot of police officers playing rugby union over here in the UK. So there is a culture of public sector workers, be it nurses, doctors, lawyers, things like that, paramedics playing rugby union. So there is a culture of certain public sector employees do play a lot of sport at amateur level. And occasionally some of them do get noticed and signed by a professional team. So I can understand the culture of the Victoria Police, but bear in mind Aussie rules in the state of Victoria in Australia is the most popular sport. Um, so you can sort of get why they're doing that. I mean, I think some of the referees in the NRL, I forget the referee's name, he was a police officer. There was a few ex-police officers became referees, and that happens a lot in European football, especially in because there's only a couple of leagues where the referee officials are professional, and a lot of them are police officers or lawyers. There's a lot of lawyers and police officers do a lot of officiating in the various European leagues that don't have professional officials, where it is all amateur and volunteer based. So there is a lot of this kind of sporting culture where uh, doctors, lawyers, police officers, soldiers as well. There are a lot of links with the army and sport in the UK, with the army rugby and the army navy and the army air force rugby teams. My dad used to play on them. And one or two of those players do get recognised by professional teams, and then there are discussions, and when they finish out their term in the military, they get signed. Um, People tend to forget that a lot of the youth coaches or amateur coaches are actually police officers, paramedics, and all that. And it's the funny thing. There's a lot of hatred with, especially football fans, towards the police. Yet a lot of the amateur referees are police officers, and a lot of the amateur coaches that coach their kids are police officers. The complete irony of the hatred, yet they rely on them to help grow the youth level sport. It's really ironic. Um, you know the issues though in certain cities where there are issues with gangs associated to sports teams, and violence around it and the crime around it is there. And that's going back to the World Cup in Russia. There's a lot of the Russian fans are actually linked to organised crime groups. Organised criminals have owned sports teams. Like Pablo Escobar, for Christ's sake, owned Nathaniel in Colombia. It was his team. He paid and owned the team. Um, so if you watch the Tale of the Two Escobars documentary, it does show Pablo Escobar and Andres Escobar. One played for the club, one owned the club. One both died in '94. So there is a link between organised crime and sport. There's also a link between the police and sport as well, which I find really, really funny. That goes hand in hand. This is where sport can do good things, and it has done good things in various sports in various areas that have a high youth crime rate or a high crime rate in general. Is to engage with those people from those groups or linked to those groups who've either fallen into youth crime and petty crime, who may have issues with holding on a job, in and out of institution and things like that, out and out of prison or out of custody. And there are some great programs out there, but they're not publicised enough. They're not. This is where the local sports and the governments could do better in advertising sport as a way out of crime, where through coaching, through playing, through supporting, being working for a sports club, it could be better advertised. I know they do these programs, sport, but technically, car hijacking and home invasions are still classed as mid-level to low-level crime. It's not the racketeering and hitmen kind of crime. It depends how a crime is reported. And I know we're going well off sport, but it's wrong of me to comment on Australian social issues because I don't live there. I have friends who live out there, but I don't. It's like with the US, with the NFL kneeling in the anthem. For me to comment on other nations' social issues when I haven't been or haven't lived there, I don't think it's right for me to do so. But at the same time, the same issues are happening here in the UK. We've got a lot of motorcycle theft in London. There's a lot of the murder rate in London's just gone through the roof. For some reason, everyone's dying in London. between the ages of like 15 and 18. You're just gonna get stabbed or shot apparently. So in London, you're not safe either. You could be any age and die. Um, that's the perception the media wants us to believe. But actually, to be fair, there is certain areas of London where there's a sudden spike in violent crime. Um, Same in Birmingham. Sport has a great way of nullifying that by taking the kids and giving them something to do. And a lot of reason why these petty crimes are happening and there's high youth crime or high crime rates is the young people and the adults, they've got nothing to do. If you take away their playing fields, if you take away their sports facilities, if you take away their, um, you know, access to cheap or affordable sport, they're going to do stuff like this because they're bored. Um, it's happening a lot. There's a lot of issues with young teenagers going around in gangs because they've got nothing to do. You give them something to do, they're going to be too knackered to commit any crime or deal any drugs because they're doing something. Um, is The issue is not just sport, but it's also giving them jobs and facilities where even if they're out of work, they can still volunteer or do something, keep them busy. I'm quite lucky that I'm from a town where okay, it's not the best town in the world where I live. There is issues with drugs around here. We are close to London, so there's that overspill effect of a big city near a smaller town or city, and there is a drug culture and a gang culture. But it's not as bad as it used to be. 20 years ago, where I live, used to be a complete like, dump. We used to call it Beirut. Welcome to Bracknell, twinned with Beirut. There was a lot of drugs, a lot of violence. Not on the same level as some of these big inner cities, so it wouldn't get reported. But we had a lot of petty crime, couple of murders. Something that you don't really expect out in the well, not out in the sticks, but we're a small town in the real scheme of things, and yeah, we had a reputation of being a shithole, and we still are. Just the shithole isn't as bad because in the last 10 years or so, they decided to pump money into fixing the youth facilities and doing up the town. It took too long. The reputation is still there. We're still a town that is considered thugs. Um, what you need is you need to give the young people jobs and social facilities. And you find when they're too busy working and busy playing sport or involved in other activities that, keep them busy, crime rate goes down. It's not hard. Um, Seriously, you keep them busy playing sport or involved in community activities or community centres and give them a child, even if it's part-time work, you find the crime rate does drop significantly. And that's something that my local area didn't have enough of. Um, I mean, yeah, we are lucky. We've got an ice hockey team, we've got a rugby team, we've got a football club, we've got a cricket club, we've got a bowls club. We have got some sports clubs, but they're not really. Yeah, we've got we have the things there. It's just getting the kids to do it. Um, but it is interesting. In some other countries, though, like if you go to Brazil or Argentina, playing football is a way out of the slums. If you get good at doing what you do, it's a way out of poverty and it can feed a family of five. Um, that's why they're probably so good at it, is because they know if I get good at this, I could provide for my family. And it's football my country. Um, that's There are still a lot of social issues. I think anywhere in the world. I don't think any country is perfect. And each issue varies from country to country, and the reasons why said incident is happening. But a lot of it comes down from how you treat your youth. So in the developed world, it's how you treat your youth. If you give them stuff to do and you give them a reason for doing it and a positive outcome, they will avoid all the shit. Panama, yes, they're more of a baseball country as well. I've seen a little documentary and an interview about the Panama football system. They're a baseball mad, Major League Baseball mad country. There are a lot of their good players play in Major League Baseball. A lot of their good players and all the money's in baseball. Football is getting there. Facilities aren't what we would class as great, but Panama, they're pretty good. It's also a very small population. But when they qualified for the World Cup, the people went mad, absolutely mad. So it's increased the interest in the secondary sport. But yeah, they do come from a culture of desperation. They have a border with Colombia. There's a lot of drugs fly through their country. Um, Central America is not the most stable region in the world. If you've got to see what's happening in Honduras and Nicaragua with all these extrajudicial killings, Colombia across the border, Pablo Escobar. There's it's on a crossroads of the world. But it's an interesting story. It's a great story because they've not many are qualified. They qualify. They play against two of the best teams in the world in Belgium and England with their history of those nations have in international football and the players they have. And they get to play on the biggest stage. No, I don't think the weather will bother them. And I honestly think that the way they would set up, you're going to have to play with pace to beat them. You're going to have to be incisive, quick passing with quick movement on and off the ball, and drag them around. If you looking at how some of the English players have been playing lately, both at club and international, there's not enough pace on the ball. But when we actually ping the ball quick up front and get a player like Vardy or Rashford or someone like that to run at defenders, we score goals. When we're slow and measured in the build-up, we're not good enough. The two friendlies England had against Holland and Italy, we were not good enough when we had a lot of possession. When we were counter-attacking, we were very, very good because the passing was quick, the movement off the ball was quick, and the moving in behind, where you have one forward drop deeper towards midfield and one forward going on beyond it, pulls the defence about. Panama have proven in the qualifying they're very good at set pieces. They're a very tall team, they're a very physical team. They've been together a while as well. It's not as if like these guys are they've found 11 guys plus a few subs in a bar. These guys have been playing together as a group of players for a very long time. Some of them are very experienced at their level. A few of them do play in the MLS, so they're playing at a decent level where they get some decent coaching and they're playing with some world class players who are the overseas players who come over to play. So they're not hopeless. It's their first major tournament though. But if you underestimate the opposition, you will lose. It's simple. You have to give them the level of respect. They've got here by right. They qualified by right. They didn't have to go through a playoff. They got there. I don't know what it is, but Latin American players, be it from Central or South America, have very good technical ability. So they're not going to be hopeless on the ball. They're going to have a bit of skill about them. They're well organised. There's an English link there with some of the coaching setup from Britain in the youth development and things like that. They come from a culture of desperation where, like, for these guys, this is their biggest stage where they can get themselves a decent paycheck. And I've noticed that previous World Cups in the last since '98, I've seen Panama flags. So there's clearly, Panamanians around the world who do follow their national side and do have an interest in how the team does. They're not going to be easy to do. I think they would. I think they're going to draw at least two of their games. I think they're going to probably draw against England, and they'll draw against Tunisia, and they're going to be very tough to beat. They're going to be solid. They're going to be organised, and they're going to tackle viciously. They're going to be physical in the tackle. So maybe discipline could be an issue for them, like with the over exuberance of the tackle. But for the most part, they're going to be a very solid team. They're big and they're powerful. Fitness could do them. Oh no, I've watched documentaries on some of the players, especially in South America. A lot of them do actually live at the stadium, the national stadium, or the club stadium, or nearby in not very great conditions. For them, it means more for them. I think there's very few of their players playing for big. They're not playing in Europe a lot of them. Most of them are actually Panama based, which I think is a good thing. Having more domestically based players for a national side, I think is a good thing. Um, but it's hard work. It's good work ethic. Comes down to them. They've got a work ethic, and I think you could look at that against. I would say I would say tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1. That's how they do rugby union. That's how they do football. The top teams are on the big money. Those professionals are on big contracts. They're paid handsomely. I think overpaid probably. Then you've got the mid-level teams who may get out the group, may get to the second round, quarterfinals. Again, they're some of those star players, big money, and then the lesser teams, not many of their players are star players. And for them to get where they are, pretty good going. But this is why I like watching the World Cup, because you do get, like, Costa Rica, can they repeat again? Of course they can. Why do I think that? Because they've been regularly appearing at the World Cup now for several World Cups in a row. Um, they do have players who have played in Europe and played at a good level in Europe. Um, Costa Rica, I think, is a more stable country politically, so therefore the funding is there. There's none of this chaos and military coups all the time. They've eradicated, no, they haven't eradicated poverty, but the poverty in Costa Rica, they're better educated. There's more hope in Costa Rica. You go to Panama, there's a bit less. There's a bit less political stability. You're closer to Colombia. You've got, the issues happening in Venezuela. That can destabilize a country politically and therefore cause social upheaval. Costa Rica are very similar, though, to Panama in the fact that people underestimated them 4 years ago and they did very, very well. They're very solid, technically good. This is what you'll see with South and Central American teams is because they grow up playing in the favela, as you say in Brazil, the shanty town, the slum, and they play street football, whereby skill is very important in a tight technical area, in a very small area. They're very technically good. They're very technically gifted. They play with a bit more passion, that Latin flair. And it is interesting because you've got to look at the teams that didn't make it. Your United States, your Chiles, your Hollands, your Italy, some of these bigger nations that have been regularly appearing at World Cups for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they fell flat because they underestimated the smaller nations or they underestimated the nations that may not have the financial oomph, may not have that star player, but have that good, solid, hard work, with good technical ability. It's interesting. I mean, I think I'm not sure how the Panamanian players will do when it comes to the long distance on travel, but the conditions will definitely not face them. Most of them play in Panama. They're used to hot conditions. They're used to thunderstorms. They're used to high humidity. We'll see what happens. They are an unknown, and there are teams that are knowns that underperform. And there's going to be a lot of videos done on the World Cup. It's only 2.5 weeks away. Not everyone who follows the channel is going to enjoy, my World Cup coverage because they're not necessarily football fans. But it's a big tournament. I covered the Rugby League World Cup. I'm covering this one next to the Rugby Union World Cup. So every year there's a World Cup tournament of sorts. And of course, next we've got the Cricket World Cup as well. So I'm more than happy to cover as many sports as possible. That's why I enjoy the channel. It's a good hobby. I mean, and I've been asked the question, if I was to get paid some money for doing it, would I do it full time? Of course I would. Like, if I got enough money off YouTube to survive and make a living, of course I would. That's why I'm considering doing a Patreon at some point in the next month. Canadian T20. I mean, the Canadian T20 is a smaller tournament. It needs to grow, and he is a star player. The Canadians do play one day in T20 cricket. They do play at the World Cup. They do play the T20 World Cup. So they're trying to grow the game there. And there's a lot of sports that are going to North America that aren't traditional sports. The whole thing is, though, with the whole Steve Smith thing, I don't think he's as guilty as David Warner, but I do think there's more to come out about what happened on that South Africa tour and previous Test series that they played. I think Steve Smith will play for a cricket for Australia again. Whether the fans will be happy to welcome him back or whether he'll fit in well to the Australian side is another thing. I think Tim Payne will stay as captain in Test form of the game and one days. I don't think David Warner comes back and plays for Australia again. Bancroft, I think, again, he was a bit of a patsy by the more senior players. There is more to come out about that. It's very interesting how quiet it's gone on that front of things. These players seem to have gone to ground and gone quiet. And it's gone a bit quiet on the Australian front. I wouldn't say Smith is actually the worst out of the bunch. I think David Warner is the worst out of the bunch. I think Steve Smith clearly realised he made a mistake, but I think he wasn't mature enough to be captain. I don't think clearly players have respect for him if other players, we will see what happens. It's a difficult one because a lot of players have scandal in their career in team sports, and some sports seems to welcome back scandal, riven players more easily than others. Rugby league has a habit of welcoming, scandalous players back into the game who've had drug problems, gambling issues, domestic violence allegations, Australian sport also has this weird fetish for, like, I don't know what it is, when players misbehave off the field and do really bad things, they seem to welcome them back more readily than in other countries where they go, "Hey, you burnt your bridges here on your job." Because you've got to look at Paddy Jackson, the Ulster rugby union player, and his mate. I forget his mate's name now. Oldbury, I think his name is, or something like that. And they were meant to sign for sale, and then the fans were visceral, going, "We don't want this guy." And he was found innocent of the charges he faced in court. And I think the media coverage, I don't know what the media coverage over here of Paddy Jackson and his trial in Northern Ireland in Belfast, I think it was in Belfast, yeah, wasn't well covered. But in Ireland, the media went after him. And okay, it turns out he's got a really despicable view of women. Okay, he's a bit of a sexist pig. He's a bit disrespectful. Personally, don't like him. Professionally, he's a very good player, but he can't get a contract with a rugby club because fans are going to, boycott the club. It's a cultural thing. I don't know why Australian sport is more accepting of players who've had a scandalous issue, legal stuff, drink problem, drug problem, whatever it may be. I think Australian sport seems to be more forgiving than maybe some European leagues or countries. I don't expect players to be. I think the media has a big role to play in a lot of things. A lot of sportsmen do have some legal ramifications. So Paddy Jackson's a prime example. Zach Hardaker in the rugby league with his cocaine ban. So when it comes to something that has legal ramifications, people on social media, we have to be careful because we can jeopardise or prejudice. If enough people watch a video or enough people read a tweet, it can prejudice legal proceedings, and that's something as an ex-law student I'm a bit cautious on because of the ramifications that may result from me saying something, give a personal opinion. There's a lot going on with the Me Too movement right now and things like that, and there are some players who have not necessarily been the most gentlemanly in their off-field conduct, and there have been those who've partied hard and had a playboy lifestyle that may not always be agreeable to some fan bases when they're with big money. Yes, the smartwatches. I found that really interesting. Really interesting. Pakistan, though, as a cricket team, the rumours of match fixing keep hanging over the necks of the Pakistan team, and it doesn't go away, and that's something that keeps following this team around for years. They're not allowed to play test matches in their home country for security reasons and all sorts. I'm surprised Pakistan is still a test playing nation and they haven't been suspended from test play. But the ICC has proven that they are a gutless organisation when it comes to, because South Africa, obviously with apartheid, they weren't allowed to play for years in international competition in sports. Pakistan, political violence, they're allowed to play. Yet they have so many human rights abuses. It boggles belief. It's the same as Zimbabwe. They didn't say to Zimbabwe, "You're banned from international competition because you're dictator of a leader. Mugabe is murdering his own people. You can play." Even though he's ethically cleansing people. But the ICC has shown since apartheid ended in South Africa that they are pretty toothless when it comes to certain nations who have some rather interesting human rights violations and political issues. Pakistan, they're not allowed to play tests in their own country. They have to play in the UAE when they play home test matches. I don't know. There's different reasons why match fixing takes place. There are different reasons why match fixing takes place. And this is happening in snooker right now with 3 players being suspended whilst investigated for fixing snooker matches. There are different reasons. Now, if we go on the Western world reasoning, players got a gambling addiction or a drug addiction, gets into debt with some not very nice people, has to fix a match. That's a pretty basic, theory. Happens in collegiate level in the US. Again, a college player in the US has a drug problem, alcohol problem, daddy's got in debt, has to fix a match. On the other hand, I actually find it interesting that people from the poorer backgrounds who come up through the shanty town playing football or cricket or whatever sport it may be around the world are actually less likely to fix the game than those from the more privileged countries. I find that interesting. Those from the better off countries in the world where there's a higher standard of living for, your average man in the street, average woman in the street, average working man as a household, they seem to be fixing the matches less. Those from the better off backgrounds seem to be fixing matches more. And that is the same in Pakistan and India. There's some very, very wealthy areas of Pakistan and India in the middle classes who play a lot of cricket. They fix those from the middle class backgrounds are ones more linked to match fixing than those from the working class backgrounds. I think for them, the working class background, it means more just take home X amount of rupees or dollars a day to feed the family than those from the higher up background. Those who have been club cricketers who play in the street or play on the basic pitches from the working classes seem to be more in love with the sport. And when they make the money, they make sure their family's looked after. They make sure their friends are looked after. The richer players from the richer backgrounds seem to be a little bit more susceptible to gambling issues, alcohol problems, drugs. I think it goes across sport. I find that those from the poorer backgrounds are less likely to fix. Those from the more privileged background, it's the same in the Western world. It's the same in the first and second world countries that aren't third world and aren't emerging. You look at those players who've come from poorer backgrounds, they seem to be less likely to match fix. Some will. There will be some who do. The greed goes to their heads, and they might want to make some bit extra money. But you look at those from the more privileged backgrounds. In South Africa, to play cricket, you have to go to the boarding schools or those grammar schools, really, to play it, to be noticed. You can play in the street, and there are some street cricketers in South Africa, but most of them come from the middle classes. Even the black players or mixed race players, they come from the middle classes. Um, Hansi Cronje, for example, prime example, the biggest match fixing scandal I think in cricketing history. Hansi Cronje, um, very very well-to-do family, very well off, comfortable upbringing, post-apartheid captain of South Africa, gets caught going to play. I think he was playing a test match in India, and the Indian police, were looking at an organised crime syndicate who were using this hotel to have clandestine meetings, and he just happened to be in the hotel, picked up on the bug because the organised crime group they weren't aware was involved in match fixing. Invited him into the room, and that's how he got caught. He wasn't caught because someone went to the authorities. He was caught by accident, but he was from a very, very well-off background, reasonably well educated, very good, talented player, big matches. It's an interesting one. That's what I seem to find is most of the match fixing at the top level is from those from uh, better off backgrounds. But then at the lower amateur levels, there is an issue with match fixing because of other social reasons. Um, it is an interesting one, though. Very interesting. Um, to it's an interesting topic brought up. Is the match fixing? It's a very interesting topic brought up. It covers a lot of sports. Um, it's a difficult one to really put a finger on. I've watched a lot of documentaries about match fixing in sport. It's more prevalent in Asia, in Southeast Asia and China and Japan and the Philippines and India than in other countries. Although these organised crime groups they're global, and it's an interesting topic. It's to do with unlicensed gambling. You make gambling legal, and then the gambling companies have these fail safes in place that red flag a suspicious betting pattern on a match between individual players, such as tennis or snooker or a team sport, and they flag the suspicious betting patterns. They help the authorities work out, okay, there is something going on in this game where there could be a fix. I also find it interesting that the only country in the world that actually has a dedicated police force into dealing with sports-based corruption is Australia. It is Australia. Australia is the only country in the world that has a police unit nationwide dedicated to combating corruption in sport and match fixing and organised crime links to sport. No other country in the world does. Yeah, there's a few issues coming up with these transgender athletes. There's a female jockey who used to be a man who's a horse racer in England. That's made some news. Um, it's an interesting issue. Not something I know enough about to really comment about on the channel at the moment. I do a lot of research, and I'm not even, what I find is a lot of sports fans are everyday life. They're perfectly fine. You give them a sport, they become the most bigoted pigs in the world, male or female. They become really vile. Um, it, trans the transvestite transgender argument. I have a friend who's gone from female to male. Yes, they can do that. They can turn her bits into man bits, and it's a long process. It's a painful process, and it, I've got a couple of mates who transitioned from female to male. It's not a pleasant process. Let's just say that it's not a pleasant process to go from one gender to the other. Um, it's an interesting topic. There's all sorts of these qualifications, to get medically qualified and to, all this kind of BS they have to go through. And as a group of society, they're a very small minority, but they have to go through a lot of BS in their life and a lot of hurdles in the workplace, in sport, in social activities. It's not my place to really say. I don't know enough about on the sporting side of things with the issues that go with that. Not a story that's made it over here, but we have our own trans athlete who's a jockey who's gone from male to female. That's making the news. It's interesting because they all say, oh, that everyone's been really welcoming and blah, 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 blah. No, there's a lot of fans out there that will not accept it. Yes, non-contact sports like golf are interesting. I'm surprised they haven't done like mixed pairs where they have like a male and female player going against a male and female player in pairs golf. That's something that is interesting. Um, they do mixed doubles in tennis. Why can't they do mixed doubles in golf? There you go. There's one. Women can compete in motorsport against men. Danica Patrick, Indy 500. She used to compete in NASCAR. Um, you have a couple of female motorcycle racers in the various superbike competitions floating around, and there's been a female biker won a Grand Prix race as well recently. I think last year, in the last season. So when it comes to motorsport and horse racing, for example, completely equal. When it comes to tennis, you have mixed. Um, to be fair, physically, I don't think, unless the woman's on severe amount of steroids, I think some of the male golfers, their drives, Tiger Woods at his prime, he could drive it like 400 yards. I can't see women driving it 400 yards. But when a female does it, I can believe it. It would be interesting to see if they did like doubles pairings for golf and experiment with that, because golf is a sport that does have an issue where certain clubs, I think there's a few golf clubs that don't allow female members, and that's become an issue for where the British Open's held, for example. I think there's like 2 or 3 clubs that don't allow British in Britain that don't allow female members, and I think the same is in the US. Golf is a sport that is a bit old-fashioned and needs to adapt. There's equal pay is another thing, but when it comes to motorsport and horse racing, women are allowed to compete against men. They are. So motorsport and horse racing have been leading the way for quite some time with joint participation, and also like the badminton horse trials. So when it comes to like event horse racing as well, like eventing, women and men compete against each other equally as well. So any equine sport, they're allowed to compete against each other, and motorsport, they're allowed to compete against each other. So I find it interesting that motorsport, a very male-dominated sport, is actually allowing women to compete at the highest level. You've seen it in NASCAR, IndyCar, touring cars, F1. Women have driven in F1. We've seen it in superbikes, not MotoGP top level, but we have seen it in motorcycle racing. We've seen it in rallying as well. Women are competing as co-drivers and drivers in rallying in the World Rally Circuit and the National Rally Circuit. So motorsport is leading the way, which is a very male-dominated, testosterone-filled sport. Horse racing and eventing in the equine sports, again, female jockeys can compete against men. There is no bias against them. The Grand National, there were 3 female jockeys this year. I think 3 or 4 jockeys this year were female. So some sports do have equal participation or allow it in the rules. Others, you have to have separate teams. And I can understand the team sports, yes, football, rugby league, cricket. I understand those kind of, because they're contact sports. Golf, I'm surprised they don't do golf in pairs, man and female versus man and female pairs competition. That would be really interesting for me to watch. I would happily watch that. Like, you see mixed doubles in tennis. I'm not sure about volleyball. I'm not sure if indoor outdoor volleyball has mixed teams. They might do, not at Olympic level at least. But it is an interesting one. I mean, snooker. There's a female player who's now playing on the men's snooker tour. They are looking at doing it in snooker and pool. Darts, not quite there yet. And these are the minor sports now, but some sports are leading the way and others aren't. I think team sports would be difficult, and the contact sports especially, that would be difficult for women and men to play together because they might kill each other. And there's a very good female sporting structure in football and rugby, both kinds of rugby and cricket for the national sides. They have got good things in place. But the rules are exactly the same, though. That's what I find very interesting. The rules are exactly the same in those team sports that women's play. Women players participate in. They're exactly the same as the men. That's more equality for me. And I think at youth level, up to the age of 11, girls can play on boys' teams as well, and then they have to separate them. So it is interesting. It's an interesting topic, debating point, discussion point. Honestly, it's only the driving distance from the tee. That's it. They only reduce the length of the hole, if you were, from tee to flag. Apart from that, the rules are exactly the same. They have the same over par, under par. A par 4 for a male will be a par 3 for a woman. They reduce it a little bit, or it could be a par 4 for a woman, it's a par 3 for a man. Apart from that, the basic rules are actually the same. I'm just surprised they haven't done, because in tennis they have mixed doubles. They found a way to mix mix both men and female, and but the rules are exactly the same for mixed doubles as they are for men's doubles and women's doubles. They're exactly the same. The set lengths, the amount of sets, that's something that is up for discussion, and the prize money, but basically the rules are the same. Germany football is interesting because a lot of the football clubs that you see as Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, are actually sporting clubs. So I did a video today on Boca Juniors. They also cover other sports for both genders. When I last lived in Germany, it was like 91. I was a toddler. I can't really comment. I do have some friends who have spent a lot of time in Germany. Very interesting in Germany, the amount of youth participation for girls in not just football but a lot of sports. They're very big on that. I think you find this more in Europe because there's more involvement from young girls and teenage girls and women in sport than you think. There really is a lot of amateur and professional level women involved in sport in Europe, more than over here in the UK, I think. That's what I've seen. Living in Italy in the Alps, as I did for a while, there's a lot of involvement in the local sports scene by a lot of women. Skiing, mountain biking, swimming, gymnastics. There's a lot of real live involvement, speed skating. So there's a lot of involvement over there where it's seen as allowed that you can do sport. The Scandinavian countries are leading the way in women's pay in sport as well. The Norwegians said equal pay for both men and female players who represent both at club and international level in football. Pay. Wow. So you're a pet guy. Well, sorry to hear that. My family have no pets. My mum, however, my mum and my stepdad have 2 dogs. But we have not had pets in this household. So the other bit of the family I live in for a very long time. I used to have some tropical fish back in the day. My sister used to have some tropical fish and cats, but we're not really a pet family, really, as a whole. not a long history, not a lot of history with pets. A couple of cats in Italy that we had. My sister had a couple of cats and some tropical fish and some rats as well. Yeah, I had some tropical fish as a kid. Um, my mum's got two dogs, but we're not traditionally a pet family. If you really think about it, not all members of the family, cousins, and all that have pets. It's really interesting though. Um, I'm more. I don't have the space, and the family members that I live with. It's not really a pet friendly household with my predominantly space and the time needed to look after pets. It just doesn't work with our household really. My mum's household's different. They have the time to deal with the two dogs, but my grandparents and me we don't have the time to deal with it because I work a lot of contract jobs and shift jobs when I do have work, and so I'm not in the house a lot. And my granddad's not had good health in recent years, and my nan, she doesn't have the time. It's more to do with the time of having to dedicate a lot of time into um, looking after a pet. The feeding, take to the vet. It's basically having another child. Um, and that's something that we just do not have the time to do and the space. I have a pet snake with my friend, but it lives at my friend's house. So because he has a history of pets and then looking after them. Wow, that cat is old. Good old life, eh? Um, it is off topic talking about pets, but it is time consuming. And to have a pet is to have a lot of patience and be able to dedicate the time to the pet. I my garden isn't big enough for a dog or a cat. Um, I don't have room for a vivarium for my snake, so it lives in my mate's house. We share a pet because we bought it together, and it's sort of a mate thing. So he has the snake. Um, he has two dogs and a tortoise as well. He's mad. But with his family, they've had pets for years, ongoing, long time. So they're used to dealing with having animals. Not really sports based, is it? But then I suppose it's always nice to talk about non-sport things occasionally. But it is interesting listening to like people's the questions that people have and the backgrounds of the viewers of the channel because it gives me a better idea of what sports you guys like and what activities you guys do and gives me an idea of what um, Crufts. There's one. Dog shows, pet shows. They get a lot of TV coverage. Crufts gets a lot of TV coverage over in the UK. Um, and horse race breeding as well. They get a dog greyhound racing. There you go. Greyhound racing. So the dog track. Crufts that gets a lot of TV coverage here in the UK. Obviously, the horse racing is a very very popular sport to participate in and watch. And there's a few issues about the betting regulations changing in this country, which could affect horse racing in a not so good way. So that's the only animal-based sports I can think of. You've got camel racing in Arabia. They do that. They do camel racing in Arabia, and that has they spend a lot of money on that. They get really passionate about that, the camel racing. But no, there's a lot of interesting sports out there. Anything to do with horses, so eventing or horse racing, very big sports over here in Europe, really big. Yeah, there has been a few documentaries into that. There's been over here as well in the UK. There were a few owners who sent their dogs to be trained, and by trainers, or they bought dogs from breeders, and there was issues with them pumping them full of steroids, pumping them through unlicensed medications, not telling the owners of the dogs what was actually going on, and a lot of ex dogs are being rescued. The owners, can't keep them. I want to move on to the next. There are some not very nice owners and some very, very bad trainers as well. And a lot of these dogs end up in rescue homes or illegally put down. I'm not a big fan of betting on greyhounds, really. My cousin's partner works in animal rescue. She focuses primarily on cats now, but she used to do all animals. And there was a lot of racing greyhounds that ended up dumped by the side of the road, abandoned, all sorts. And it's the same with horses as well. There is an issue with these types of sport where the welfare of the animals comes into question at times. There's been several documentaries done on it, undercover investigations in the media, and that brings it in, highlights it to a national or international audience. So this is happening. The animal welfare is, not being adhered to. I know in Australia they're very, very strict on the rules, I believe, on animal welfare and training and things like that. There are problems with long term with animal welfare in sports. I do know about red rings. I've got a few friends who are involved in eventing and horse racing as stable hands and jockeys, or have been. So I know a fair bit about horse racing and eventing through my friends who've done it and competed in national tournaments and things like that. And they take pride in looking after their horses. They really take pride in making sure they're healthy and fit and looked after and well fed. And when they don't when the horses can't compete anymore, they make sure the horses, allowed off into pasture and allowed to roam pretty free in the farmland. Because it's free manure as well. Let's say farmers actually like a bit of horse poo on their fields because it's good for growing crops. I've got a few friends who live in not too far from me who are involved in horse racing and eventing, and I've seen them look after their horse. They really treat them like kids. They really, and they're very sad when a horse passes away as well. They're pretty upset. Not all trainers are bad, and not all owners are bad. There is a minority who don't look after their animals. And it is unfortunate. And so all of these animal rights campaigners want to bang the drum and say, "But we're helping the horses." No, you're not. You're actually damaging an industry that employs hundreds of thousands of people in this country. You want to weed out the bad to make sure the good are protected. That's the funny thing is, I'm not a big fan of flat racing. I actually like watching national hunt racing. The horses are actually looked after better than the jockeys. I can tell you that. They really are looked after. It's when these animal rights campaigners are whinging about a horse getting put down. It's because the horse is really badly hurt, and it's shot with an actually quick, painless, done. But the bad trainers, there are a few. There are some on suspicion who are a bit. Are they doping the horses? Are they treating them right? Are they looking after them? There are a handful that have had allegations against them, not just here in the UK, but across the world in horse racing. Like not training them properly, not looking after them properly. There are a few, and it does get into the press, but it doesn't get the coverage it should. There needs to be a bigger conversation about the welfare of the animals. But back to other sports, though. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics. Obviously, the Champions League final is now just over. It's 3 hours away. Yeah, so I'll be going offline in a bit, have a bite to eat, and have a cup of tea. But I'm looking forward to this Champions League final. Now, I don't know why BT Sport only show the Europa League Champions League finals on YouTube. I think they should put all the games on YouTube. They might get a bigger audience. And that's what I find annoying. It's free to wear over in Australia, but we have to pay through the nose behind a paywall. And BT Sport, when I watched the Europa League final, I watched the full programme, the build up to the final whistle. The first 45 minutes of the programme was half of it was ads. And they couldn't even get their own pundits. They had to nick them from the BBC, and Martin Keown and Jermaine Genius, who are BBC employees. They had to rent them for the weekend and go, "Can we have these guys for a game?" A lot more ads than an ITV used to have. ITV's build-up sometimes was 15 minutes into a game. 45 minutes of crap. And then the pre-match entertainment overran by 10 minutes, so the kickoff was actually delayed. And it was just ads. I mean, again, I don't have Sky. It's on Sky. I don't have. My family refuses to get pay-per-view TV, and I actually agree with them. I think putting we do have free to air, but only on certain tournaments and certain games, and that's annoying. That's the problem. Is the organisers of leagues and sports in Europe seem to like putting our sport behind paywalls that are expensive, And then when you do get to watch it on a live stream or on YouTube, if the TV provider wants to put it on YouTube, so BT Sport, they've realised they're not getting the viewers. They're not getting the viewers. People are not paying for BT Sport. They refuse to because it's really expensive. They get more viewers on YouTube. So I'm wondering if streaming is the way forward for TV, the sports rights, because they still get the ad revenue. They still get the ads paid for in that stream. And then when the stream goes up a day later, they put ads on it, which they did, and they get more people watching, want to watch the full match replay. They get a bigger audience. They can tell from the data how many people are watching. BT get crap ratings, and the only reason why BT survives and why ITV Sport and Setanta fail is BT has a mobile phone and internet network backing it up. Which I think they should split up the companies from phone, internet, and TV. BT Sport collapses. I mean, they only got 80,000 for Tottenham Arsenal game last season. 80,000 viewers for a pay-per-view sports. And do you think? And of course, we've got the rugby Exeter Saracens final. Again, behind a paywall, can't watch it. Cannot watch it, which is wrong. Exeter Chiefs versus Saracens behind a paywall. That is absolutely disgusting. And this is something which I do not agree with. And then when someone actually does manage to get it up on YouTube, the copyright violation is taken down very quickly. They got really strict on the copyright violations on YouTube the last 12 months. That's why I can't watch any NRL at the moment, which is really annoying because I like watching the National Rugby League in Australia, but the channels I watch are all getting closed down because they're obsessed about the copyright violation. Yet they're getting a bigger audience who want to then buy into the sport. Take it off a paywall, put it on free to wear, we can watch it. There is an audience who want to watch for free. Yeah, BT Sport is really poor programming. It's really bad. I mean, the commentary. Robbie Savage tried his best last week in the Europa League final on the commentary. He really tried his best. But again, he works full time for the BBC. They had to borrow him from the BBC on a one-off contract to get him in there, and it was crap. The programming. They had this woman presenter on pitch side who knew nothing about the sport, absolutely clueless. Nothing against female presenters. There's some very good female sports presenters who know a lot about the sport they're talking about. Gabby Logan, ex-gymnast, she knows a lot about sport. Her husband's an ex-pro rugby player. Brilliant. When she's on the BBC, she is brilliant to watch, right? Then you have a few others who work for the BBC and ITV who are really good at what they do, commentators. These women really are clued up. BT Sportswoman, I forget her name, ditzy blonde, clueless about what was going on, and ended up having a laughing fit with Robbie Savage. Robbie Savage is embarrassed and he's trying to laugh and go, okay, well, we'll laugh our way out of this. She was absolutely clueless. It was crap. There was so many more ads on it as well. The commentary was poor. The ad, you think it's a pay-per-view channel, less ads. No, there's more. There were more ads on their coverage than ITV used to have the Champions League 3-4 years ago. I cannot see how the broadcasting rights can stay with BT Sport because they're the only ones who actually get the broadcast rights for European football in this country, which is, guess what, against the rules, ironically, because Sky and ITV used to share the rights and both were happy with it, and both were very disappointed when BT got the sole rights, which is wrong. There's competition rules, which they seem to have broken and got away with. But no, BT's crap. My BT bill's gone up through the roof since BT Sport because they've got to prop it up. They refuse to accept their TV is crap and is failing. And people are switching off BT. More and more people are switching to other internet providers than BT because they've had enough with the crap service and the rip-off prices. One of the reasons why I haven't done a live stream for over a week and a half, 2 weeks, is because I've had internet problems. The signal keeps failing. And it's a pain in the arse. No, but BT, they've been known to get crap ratings for all their sports coverage. I think 100,000 is actually their peak viewing. Sky's had millions before. In the 90s and noughties, they've had millions. Free-to-air TV, when that's on, a hell of a lot more than 100,000 will watch it. And especially if it's on like ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, they have ad revenue as well. I don't understand why they sold all the rights off. It's wrong. I think the corporate greed is what's causing a lot of problems in rugby, cricket, and football. A lot of the problems. Especially when the ECB come out and say no young people like cricket. Well, there's a problem for that. In 2005, every young kid was watching the Ashes. So what do? We win the Ashes. You sell it to Sky. Let's sell it to Sky. And all the papers the next day when that deal was done were furious. They were like, "Well, you just killed the sport." And guess what? Viewership is going down, and the England team is shit. Ireland touring Australia. I think Ireland are going to batter Australia. I think Slipper, the Australian prop, failed a cocaine test. He's been caught with cocaine. Um, so Australia's best prop is on a drugs ban for 2 months, I think, because he pled guilty or whatever. He had mitigating circumstances. Um, yeah, no, cricket's gone right down the shitter. ITV4 the IPL, Sky took that away. Channel 4 had the Test cricket after BBC, Sky took that away, and they are selling out. And the viewership is falling through the floor. I think Ireland will beat Australia in the Test. Cricket has gone down the pan. Although BBC are getting the World Cup next year, and after 2020, they're getting a lot of domestic T20 competition. So the ECB is slowly realising they might have made a mistake. So some more domestic cricket and a few international cricket one day in T20s are coming back on terrestrial TV in a couple of years' time. So we are slowly winning the battle because not enough people are paying for it. They just refuse. 18 million households do not have pay-per-view sport. There you go. There's your answer. And they said, but all these houses have a Sky. Yeah, they don't pay for the sports package because that's an extra 30 quid a month, which they're not willing to pay. It's quite obvious. You rip them off, they're not going to want to pay. And the coverage is terrible. I've seen the Test matches on Sky at my mum's house. Oh my God, some of the commentary, I want to gouge my eyes out. I watched a couple of years ago, England South Africa over Christmas. I woke up early in the morning and I watched the whole day's play. Oh my God. The commentary was shocking. Sky, no, why are we giving Rupert Murdoch so much control over our TV media? We've already worked out he cannot run newspapers properly or legally. Why are we giving him the TV rights? England will win that series. I think South Africa have more problems than England do, although England need to really improve. England's performance in Six Nations was poor. They need to step up. I don't understand why Cipriani's on the bench. Why selecting if he's not going to start? He's proven at 10 and 15 this season he is one of the best in the English system. Play him. Don't put him on the bench. Play him. That will just dent his confidence more. And then he will get a crap performance out of him. Play him, Eddie Jones. Fucking play him. I'm getting a bit annoyed with Eddie Jones now because he's a good coach and he's making a mess of this England side. Not that I'm an England fan. I prefer watching Ireland play, but England really needs to fix a lot of their problems. But South Africa have got their own issues, and I love South African rugby, but they've got a lot of problems as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very low quality tour, and it's very stodgy. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not the best quality. But Sky have taken everything. They've got far too many sports rights. They need to be on free to air. Really, these sports are going to find that less and less people are watching and participating. Apart from some reason football, but football's gone down the crapper since Sky Sports got all the rights. Look at the decline of the England team and Sky Sports. Just look at the decline in the England national side and Sky Sports and the Scottish League as well and Sky Sports. Just look at the parallels there. It's kind of striking. You put it all behind a paywall, the quality drops off a cliff. And you seriously have to look at, taking the European games off free-to-air TV. The quality drops even further. Because less kids are watching, less kids want to pick up a ball and play. It doesn't take a genius to work out. 18 million households do not have subscription sport. Hence why Premier Sports, the other pay-per-view sports channel, came up with the idea in August of free sports. There's 18 million households which don't have a free sports channel. We'll give it to them. It's a slow process, but it's a sign in the right direction. But it is. That's how it is. Now the England South Africa, I think it's going to be not a great quality tour. I think both sides need a win and just get back to winning and showing they can win. Both sides are going through a bit of a rebuild crisis phase at the moment. England are on a bad side overnight, but all those issues were highlighted all at the same time. Some players have been overplayed. Other players aren't getting the chances they deserve. A lot of Exeter players, for example, should be getting that England side and not. Same with Newcastle this season. They're on form, not getting selected. I question the selectors. South Africa have other issues entirely. Some of it's political based, where you've got to have the quota system, which I think is wrong. I think you've got to encourage the black players to play rather than just saying you've got to have so many black players in the team because it's killing South African rugby. The stupid quota system. It's a legacy of apartheid and the reverse racism now. It's just stupid. Also losing 2 Super Rugby franchises to the Pro 14, different style of rugby. That's got to be a revolving thing. I wouldn't be surprised if all the South African sides end up in the Pro League at some point and get out of Super Rugby. Super Rugby is too biased towards the All Blacks. The Australians have been shafted with the Western Force. South Africans have been shafted with 2 of their teams having to join the Pro Rugby. So the All Blacks are killing themselves. They're making their domestic competition, the Super Rugby, less competitive by forcing out 2 of their biggest rivals. Japan in the Sunwolves and the Jaguares for Argentina. Okay, great, get them involved. But if you're getting rid of 3 teams out of the Super Rugby, you make it worse. What was the point in expanding if you're going to contract again? It makes no sense. And have it biased so in favour of New Zealand? It's not right. And that's causing a bit of disquiet within rugby ranks, is that in rugby union, it's so biased towards New Zealand in both refereeing and the domestic game that other players or fans are really getting put off. I know the Wales series will be broadcast live and free to air this summer. I'm not a fan of Wales, but to see top level rugby union outside of the Six Nations or World Cup free to air is a masterstroke by Channel 4. So there's signs that the sport are realising that we can't keep putting it behind a paywall because people in the 18-30 age group are not paying for subscription TV. They'd rather watch it free to air. And they've actually made that quite clear on online surveys. They don't like paying too much. They haven't got the money. Also, Sky have made F1 coverage even worse as well. Darts, just a bunch of pisshead alcoholics throwing sticks at a board. I mean, I used to like watching darts, but it's just moronic now. This turns a bit more of a rant. But no, for those who've joined the live stream a bit later, we've covered a lot of video ideas lately. We've covered a lot. So since my last live stream, we've covered the World Cup selections. I've started doing my favourite cricketing 11. So if you're into cricket, I'm doing my favourite 11 players. We've done 1 Europa League final nights, 2. I think I've done about 6. I think I've done about 6 cricket players now. My favourite cricketing 11. I think I've done about 6 of them. I've looked at a couple of other sports and a couple of other players who make my starting lineups for those teams. So I've looked at Earl Crabtree and Brian Habana. The FA Cup final, that was the worst FA Cup final I think I've ever watched. I understand the certain cities having more of a rugby culture than others, but rugby is a religion in South Africa. Rugby and cricket are the 2 most popular sports in South Africa, and they love the Springboks. For the Springboks to be this bad for this long, it's like never happened before. So South Africa need to put a marker down saying that we are still good, we are still world class, and they have some really good players. It's I think how they market it as well. If they marketed it a bit better and got locals into playing grassroots level and amateur level more, and really marketed it really well, you would see a turnaround. It's interesting that Joburg and Cape Town have bigger shanty towns or poorer areas than Pretoria and Durban. That's ironic as well. And it's to do with football. The black community is more football based, and the white community is more rugby based as well. South Africa is a very interesting country, but I love watching South African cricket and South African rugby. Their test side and Springboks are world class sides, and they're sort of going through a sort of transition phase at the moment. And hopefully they come out of it and they're still as strong as they were before. So, but the FA Cup final was the worst FA Cup final I've ever seen. The other day, terrible FA Cup final, very slow paced game, no real energy in it. Not one to be remembered for the future. We've covered a lot of stuff. We've covered the promotion of Livingston back into the Scottish Premier League. We've covered the German Cup final because the way the Bayern players didn't show the Eintracht Frankfurt players respect at the end of the whistle. At the final whistle, they normally form a guard of honour for the winning team. And they just walked off the pitch because they're arrogant bastards. That's why I don't like Bayern Munich. Yes, they try to change the players after last season. Yeah, when you have a sporting culture which is ingrained and it's worked and it's been effective, don't change it. Seriously, if you've got something that isn't broken, don't try and fix it. Simple mantra. And that's where certain sports or sports organisations, certain teams have gone wrong, is they've had a working style that has been effective for decades or years and it's been effective. And then they go, let's change it. And then they can't fix it. I understand they want to evolve the game a bit, get a bit more skill in there. South African backs are sometimes very skillful. Brian Habana, for Christ's sake. You would allow the forward pack to batter the opposition, give the ball to Habana or JP Peterson, and they could run rings around players. They've tried to go for this more power of skill mix. It doesn't work because the skill players, there are too many skill players now. And the power players, there's too few of them. And it's just getting the balance right. But there's all sorts. I mean, I'm going through all my notes and I've covered so much stuff in the last week and a half. It's unreal. I've gone through notepad after notepad after notepad. God, I'm running out of notepad. Right, let's see what else I've covered. But no, I'm starting to do more videos on the Bundesliga and the history of clubs there. That's a trend that's going to continue. That's been asked for on the channel. Some more Bundesliga videos, so we're doing them. What else are we doing? Couple of snooker videos today because there's allegations of match fixing. We've covered that earlier. Just going to give you a little recap. 3 players, 2 of them are Chinese, ranked in the top 50. One's a former player who's Welsh, David John, and you've got Yu Dailu and Chow Yu Peng, suspended for match fixing. They're investigated. And then later on, where was it? Ronnie O'Sullivan earlier today gave an interview with I think BBC, and he came out and said that he doesn't think banning players for match fixing is the solution or part of the solution. And I don't agree with that. But here's something else that's very striking about snooker. They don't have a players' union. So other sports will have a players' union, be it team sports or individual sports, where the participants can say, I'm not happy with the amount of prize money awarded for this tournament. Why are we getting paid so little? There's issues with whatever the issue may be, alcoholism, drugs, gambling. There is no players' union in snooker. And Ronnie O'Sullivan, that's the one thing I do agree with. They should be a players' union. What I don't agree with is saying there should be no bans for cheating or match fixing. Throwing a game, so another opposition player can win, or for corrupt. So no, they should be banned for doing it. That's my personal view on that side of things. He has his right to his opinion, and it does raise the question about how snooker is governed. And other sports as well. There are allegations of match fixing going around with other sports at the moment. We discussed it earlier. So for those who've joined a bit later on, that was discussed earlier on today. Honestly, it surprises me that a sport that has grown so rapidly has overlooked players' union, snooker. The last 10 years, snooker has really grown massively in participation, tournaments, ranking tournaments, prize money. I'm very, very surprised there's no players' union. But hey, that's something they are going to have to seriously consider, because if they don't, more match fixing allegations will come out of this. Stephen Lee got banned. Stephen Lee is a prime example of a match fixer in snooker, much like Hansi Cronje in cricket, or Srisanth in cricket. We were discussing this earlier when the live stream was a bit quieter, when it was just musical Neptunian and me. I have noticed those players from better off backgrounds are more likely to do it than those from the poorer backgrounds. It's amazing to me. I've noticed this. Now, whether it's actually proven in fact or not, I don't know. But I've noticed those players in individual sports like snooker or tennis or golf, or team sports like football, rugby, cricket, those players that match fix, for me, from what I've seen, come from the better off backgrounds. Whereas those from the poorer backgrounds seem to respect the sport more and respect the paycheck they receive because it's better than what they would have had living in the slum or living in the poorer district of town. It doesn't matter if it's in the poorer countries in the world or the more developed countries in the world. That's something I have noticed over many years. And I use Hansi Cronje as an example. He was from a very well-to-do background in South Africa. Okay, this is South Africa, so it's a poorer country, but the white population generally are better off than the coloured or the black population at the time that he was playing, and he fixed matches. Stephen Lee, again, decent background, not overly encumbered with poverty as a snooker player. He wasn't from the poorest background. Got a 10-year ban. There are other examples of Sri Sant in India. He was living a playboy lifestyle, but I don't understand. The reasons vary with match fixing. They do vary. They really do vary. But these guys were in the top 50 in the world. David, what was his name? Let's find his name. God, I've got to get my notes out. I think it's David Jones. I think. Let me just double check. Let's double check his name. Now, where is it? I've lost. Oh, my notes have all gone mad. David John, that's his name. He's a Welsh player. He's now off the circuit at the moment. He got declined. He didn't re-enter the tour last year. He decided I'm going to take a year out or whatever. Reasonable player, reasonable level. Got some prize money. Got some good sponsors. The other two, the Chinese players, both ranked in the top 50 in the world, so they're decent players. They're earning decent money on the tour. Good sponsors. Again, it's an odd one. It's not as if they're ranked thousands in the world. These are mid-level, good professional level. I don't understand. Snooker is open very much like cricket to match fixing. There was a report out, I think last month or the month before, about match fixing in tennis. Snooker is a very easy sport to get into. You don't have to pay a lot for the equipment. Other sports you have to pay a lot of money to get into, and there's a big overlay there. Like tennis, you have to pay for coaching and stuff. As someone who's played amateur level snooker and pool, I find it weird that you want to cheat and fix or deliberately lose so your opposition player can win for whatever reason if they're part of the fix. Which to make it a successful fix, the opposition player has to be part of it because he can have an off night and not be able to hit a barn door with his pots. And then it looks really obvious then that you're trying to lose. I've had a few mates who played semi-pro, like just below the pro ranks in snooker and pool and darts. I've got a friend who's in the BDO system for darts. He's ranked like 656 in the world or something. It amazes me what people want to cheat, especially at the top level. The reasoning is it varies from sport to sport and situation to situation. There's no universal reason. But a lot of it comes down, there's a lack of players union. So if a player or players have issue with gambling or drugs, I'm going to use the example of collegiate sport in America, and because I have watched documentaries on the Italian American mafia or the organised crime in America, and one of the major fixers who would pressure young athletes into deliberately throwing in interception parts for a touchdown, deliberately scoring an own goal, and things like that. They tried to get some leverage. So if the parent had a gambling addiction or a bit of debt, owed some money. Then when it comes to pro sports, gambling debts, drug debts, alcohol debts, they're the main reasons why a successful sportsman would be tempted by cheating. I've got to go answer the phone. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Live stream's still going. I've just got to answer the phone. I'm back. Sorry about that. We had to answer a phone call, and of course it's live stream, so I can't pause the bloody thing. Right, back to match fixing. There is no players' union, so the issues I highlighted, such as alcoholism, drug problems, gambling issues, getting into debt by overspending. This is an issue with overpaying young athletes or underpaying young athletes. Snooker is a different sport because it's an individual sport. But the lack of a players' union means that any of these issues that may happen, such as gambling addiction, drugs, alcohol, getting into debt, they can't raise those concerns. Um, when it comes to match fixing, I've watched a lot of documentaries, and there's only one country in the world that has a dedicated police unit into combating organised crime in sport and match fixing, which is part of that, and that's Australia. A Canadian journalist, I actually forget his name, and I've watched a lot of his interviews and documentaries of how he explains how open a lot of sports are to match fixing or corrupt spot fixing. Spot fixing is where you deliberately give away a corner, a free kick, a yellow card. Oh yeah, no, yeah. Once a player starts, spot fixing and match fixing are two different things, but they are related. Another issue is the the role of gambling. If it's illegal in a country, it's more likely to be match fixing. Because legalized gambling can highlight with the authorities a red flag when there's suspicious betting patterns. We've seen it highlighted several times in Britain when they've gone, we're a bit concerned about this game or this match between these two players or these two teams. There's a suspicious amount of betting for this scoreline during the game more than an average. So let's say the Champions League final tonight. We'll look at the Champions League final or the Stanley Cup final. Will it go to 7 games? If I could I'll put a bet down saying I'll go to game 7 and Vegas will win 4-3 in the series. That'll be my bet. And you've got to look at the hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people worldwide who are using online gambling, which is legal. It's legal in Canada. It's legal here in the UK. It's legal in Australia. The US is only legal in Nevada and certain areas in the US, such as Atlantic City. There's legalized areas in certain counties or certain states, but it's not nationwide. But they've just voted to bring in a bill saying nationwide gambling is going to be a thing. When you have legalized gambling, the amount of match fixing actually drops away a little bit because they've got to pay tax, they've got to be all legal and all open. And they can raise red flags when there are suspicious betting patterns where people maybe in the know may know about said player wanting to throw a game or this individual want to get sent off or this scoreline. But the issue is the illegal betting or the unlicensed, because some countries they don't have gambling licenses, but betting is legal. You don't have to have a gambling license though, and it's all a grey area. And it is interesting. Have I been live long? Yes, I've been going for 2 hours 20 minutes, Mike. So hello, Mike. We've discussed a lot of stuff in the Champions League final. I will be watching that when it's on. So I'll be going off latest 12 o'clock because I want to get my dinner in and then get sorted for the Champions League final, get on my note taking and get ready for that game. But no, once a player starts down that slippery path, I mean, Michael Chopra had big debts and he basically got threatened to be kneecapped. And Michael Chopra, if you don't know, was an English football player who played for like Newcastle and Cardiff, and they threatened to kneecap him. They threatened to basically take his car, pimp his girlfriend. They would go and say, "Well, your girlfriend can prostitute for us. Then you've got to pay us the money." And he got into hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of debt. But it's also to do with the culture in the dressing room as well. If you're in a team sport and they do a lot of gambling with each other, there can be that kind of mentality where it's around and then it gets out of hand. But no, blackmail is a thing. But the only country in the world that has a dedicated police force is Australia. They have a dedicated police unit in Australia that deals with organised crime and links to sport with match fixing or spot fixing or corruption, bribery. One country. But it's interesting what Ronnie O'Sullivan said, that snooker does not have a players' union. There's why the risks are there. There is no checks and balances in place to say if you've got an issue with gambling, alcohol, drug, any kind of addiction, any kind of debt, there's no one to talk to. Sports corruption is going to be there. It's not going to go away. There are ways to combat it. Some sports do better than others. It's more of a problem now at the lower levels because of the rise of professionalism and the amount of money involved. Cricket seems to be the worst team sport affected. Cricket seems to be the worst. Football has obviously had match fixing scandals in various leagues, but cricket seems to be when it happens in cricket, it blows up, and once it's started, it's a horrible stone to unturn. And you see what's underneath, and you're like, oh god. But we don't know what these players, if there could be failure to report. I think the way it's been worded and the official statement is they're using a lot of complex language to basically not really tell us the layman's terms. Hey, did they cheat? Did they not cheat? They're under investigation, or for what? It appears that they may have been aware of people trying to fix matches or spot fix a frame or a moment in the match, and they didn't report it. So they may or may not have had knowledge of supposed match fixing. Whether they were the ones fixing the matches or not, the way the statement was worded was very, very. Oh no, Chris Froome is not clean. Hell no, is Chris Froome clean? He had twice. If you look at the Vuelta last year, where he's nowhere, like he's been for most of this Giro, and then the next stage he's winning it when he's claiming he's had chronic asthma. He's at altitude in the Giro, and it's quite hot in Italy at the moment, which will affect his asthma. How the hell has he done that? I mean, he's already been accused and he's already breached, and he's basically getting away with it. Yeah, no, Chris Froome, he's probably not clean. I'm on the opposite opinion now. He's been nowhere in this Giro, and suddenly out of nowhere, he's winning. No, no, absolute BS is he clean. If he's had twice, if he claims his asthma is so bad, how the hell is he competing at elite level if his asthma is like to the level where it could kill him? That's what he claims. His asthma is so bad. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. No leg to stand on when two other riders who've also abused the same asthma medication to gain an advantage had less in their system and got banned. He should be banned. He has no defence. Should be banned. I'm sorry. I honestly feel he is a cheat. Whether he abused a TUE or he's abusing it, he's a cheat. Because this Giro, he has been nowhere. From beginning, when they were out in Israel, where it was bloody hot, till 2 days ago, he was losing time to Simon Yates. He was losing time the whole way. He was not on the pace. And out of nowhere, he suddenly does an 80-kilometre breakaway up a mountain and doesn't seem to be as tired as everyone else. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion on Chris Froome. I do not believe, especially after what Lance Armstrong claimed, I'm clean. After he retires, I cheated, by the way. I'm going to admit it now. I just do not believe it. I will not be watching the Tour de France this summer. I cannot believe Chris Froome is clean. And I've lost faith in the sport because the Lance Armstrong scandal. Alberto Contador has been caught doping 3 times, has won 2 Tour de France's, and people know he's doped and they haven't stripped him of them. And he's allowed back into the sport. Life bans, please. The UCI is a gutless organisation and it's corrupt. And I'm sorry, I understand why you're saying cheating is hard to eradicate. This is not match fixing. This is doping. That is a different type of cheating. Cheating to win is seen as less egregious than cheating to lose for some reason, or deliberately fixing a result. Chris Froome, he comes across his interviews. He doesn't clear his name at all. He makes himself look more guilty. He's arrogant. He's so far up his own fucking arse. Team Sky with the Jiffygate scandal. They have no credibility, none. And Chris Froome's previous team, Barlow World, had 5 riders or more. I can't remember how many riders were caught doping and was basically collapsed. So therefore, I have no belief in Chris Froome being clean. He's dirty as hell. It's just Lance Armstrong Mark II. It's so obvious because his press releases are exactly the same as Lance Armstrong. They're almost word for word. I'm clean. I don't know where these allegations come. I've always been clean. Yet it comes out that he has a dodgy blood test where he's got twice the allowed limit of a controlled substance in his system, and 2 previous riders in the past have been banned for less. Sorry. This Giro, he's been nowhere. He's been crap in this Giro compared to GC contenders. Simon Yates, okay, yeah, he blew up on a mountain. You can tell Simon Yates is clean because he's exhausted. He's physically exhausted. Froome has been crap this entire Giro, suddenly out of nowhere with severe asthma that could basically, if he had the asthma as bad as he claims, he'll be going to hospital once a month for lung tests. That is how BS Chris Froome's excuses are. And don't let me get this passionate, but my God, I do not like the man. He's clearly cheating. Because if he claims his asthma is that bad, and I have friends who have such severe asthma, they have to go to have regular heart and lung scans just to make sure all is well. Any lung chest infection could kill them. Any chest infection could kill them. If he claims his asthma is that bad, how the hell is he an elite pro cyclist? Makes no sense. He would be dead if his asthma was that bad. He'll be on the side of the road every 5 minutes with his inhaler going, shit, I can't breathe. That's oh no, I love the views. I've been up, I've worked on a cycle race, and I can tell you now, most of the cyclists were doping. Oh yeah, they were. I've worked on the Transalp, which I'm not sure if it still exists anymore. It was actually classed as a level 3, I believe, cycle race. I've lived in the mountains. The views are and the fans are mental, yeah. But you've got to admit, you have to say this. It's not just Team Sky. It's a lot of them. Astana. They they're known for doping offences. A lot of these teams have dopers on them. And for some reason, cyclists welcome back to these cheats every 2 years. Oh, you're banned, right? Welcome back. Oh, no harm, no foul. You've only got caught again. Ah, welcome back. It needs to change. The culture needs to change to life bans. You're done. You're out. You're done. The sport needs to clean up its act because a lot of mainstream fans are turning off it and going, I don't want to watch it anymore because I know this guy's cheating. It's not watching pure athletes. It's now who can actually get away with pumping themselves the most crap the most. It's Bradley Wiggins. He again. It's another one. And if he's found out to have cheated, I will be really done then with cycling. But he did struggle for many years, and he wasn't always. I wouldn't say, but with Team Sky now, I don't know. With all the bollocks, like we're a clean cut above the rest when it's known that they've done the same as every other team. It's again similarities. Lance Armstrong. It's amazing how history repeats itself. But the thing is with Bradley Wiggins, he only won it the once. Chris Froome has won it multiple times. And the first time, okay, winning it one off, we can give that back to back. People don't believe. Vincenzo Nibali, look where he is now. He's probably clean. Nibali, who won it that one time, is probably clean because he's been nowhere since. As in, he's not. He's been in the GC classifications, getting reasonably competitive, but he's not been at the top. And I like Vincenzo Nibali. I think he's a very good cyclist, and he took a long time to peak as well. Most cyclists peak in properly without doping in about their early 30s. When Vincenzo Nibali won all 3 Grand Tours. I don't think Chris Froome was a nowhere cyclist at the beginning. He was nowhere. He was a crap mountain biker who competed in Kenya, so he's never actually been a British citizen. He lives in Monaco. He's never actually been a British citizen, and he's a tax dodge. So he lives in Monaco. He was born in Kenya. Another reason why he decided to cycle for Britain, better funding than Kenya, access to better funds and better sponsors, more money. He's not even British. He's Kenyan. He's never lived here. And he lives in Monaco and doesn't pay tax here. He's a tax dodge. He's not a Brit. He's plastic. That's another reason why I don't like him. I hate these athletes who claim they're this nationality and they don't live here, they don't pay tax here. They just bugger off abroad to avoid paying tax. If they lived here and paid the tax, they're still going to be multimillionaires. Makes no sense to me. I don't like watching the Olympics anymore. There's only certain Olympic events where doping would be pretty pointless. So the extreme events where literally it comes down to more skill. Like I like watching some of the Winter Olympics, like downhill skiing and snowboarding, because they can just crash anytime. All they do is get a few inches offline, they're flying into a catch fence. But no, track and field. The 1988 Olympics, 82% of the athletes would have failed a drugs test today, and that's been proven because some of the things they were taking were legal then or not controlled. But 82% of the athletes at the Seoul 1988 Olympics would be banned for 2 years today. And that 100-meter sprint final, only one of the athletes was clean. That was the guy who finished last. The rest were all dirty at some point in their career. Sad, isn't it? It's sad. It really is sad. And most of those athletes come from middle-class backgrounds. Really embarrassing. None of them are working class at all. Absolutely atrocious. Really sad. It when you talk to me about doping and cheating in sport, I lose my shit. And people say to me, "Oh, I must be naive. It's going to happen." I know it's going to happen. My God, how sport fails to pissing ban these people. East German women, most of them are men now. The East German swimming team and the gymnast team, yeah, most of those women have had to have sex changes because the amount of crap that was pumped into their bodies for 20 years. Ban these people for life. It is so simple. And then guess what? They will stop doing it. Um, if certain sports keep allowing people back in who regularly cheat, like Alberto Contador in cycling, with open arms, and say nothing about the fact he's been banned 3 times, it is embarrassing. Drugs cheat should get life back. Simple. Problem solved. Uh, Various reasons. I don't know why athletics it is so bad. Football, rugby union, rugby league, and ice hockey have more of a recreational drug issue. More. I mean, Maradona in the World Cup in '94 was high as a kite on speed, amongst other drugs. Not for performance nights. He was just a drug addict. Um, I don't know why it is that cycling and the Olympic sport movement is so doped up. I think it's political interference, so politics, it's state-sponsored doping, as we've had it with the Russians and other countries like the Kenyans. Um, I don't know why it is. And the US are just as bad. The US collegiate system is shocking for doping offences, absolutely shocking. Um, there's a couple of NHL players who are currently banned, serving bans for doping offences, not many. Most of their issues are recreational drugs and alcohol. And I could name a list of players who had issues with drugs and alcohol in their careers. And when I say drugs, I mean recreational drugs like Grant Fuhr, Bob Probert, Mike Ribeiro, Derek Bugard, and painkillers. That was legal. Um, that's the NHL. I could go on about American football. There's a few more steroid-based cases in that, but again, that's more collegiate-based, as the feeder system is through American colleges, and they have a massive issue with their sports programs doping their athletes. In Australia, we've had the peptide scandal for Stephen Dank, and in the AFL and the NRL, I don't know what it is. I really don't know why track and field is so full of dopers. I don't know why cycling is as well. I really don't understand that. Most sports, when it comes to drugs, is more recreational, like cocaine and speed and cannabis. Um, it's an interesting one. It really is. There's an issue with this. I mean, I did a video on it. I had to delete it because the amount of abuse I received. But snus, which is the Scandinavian tobacco, which you put in a pouch in your mouth and you just sit underneath your tongue, or you just absorb it. That could improve concentration levels because of the amount of nicotine. There's been issues with players taking a lot of Pro Plus and Lucozade tablets and energy tablets, which can lead to heart attacks. We've seen cyclists drop dead on the bike in the Paris-Roubaix, probably to do with EPO doping, blood doping. Because why would a perfectly healthy 23-year-old drop dead? Tennis. Richard Gasquet has been banned for cocaine. His excuses were piss poor. He was just a playboy. Come on. Tennis does have some issues with match fixing in the lower levels. Doping, not so much. There isn't so much. It's more, again, recreational drugs. Martina Hingis, cocaine. Richard Gasquet, cocaine. Some of the high-profile tennis players are party animals. They like to party hard. There are issues with individual rugby league and rugby union players, for example, taking steroids here in Europe. There's been several players banned, but most of the drug scandals seem to be recreational. The whole Bath team doing cocaine. Zach Hardacre and Rangi Chase in rugby league doing cocaine. Yeah, I'm not a big baseball fan. I know you are, Mike. So I'm understanding what you're coming from here because you do follow the sport more than I do. And Major League Baseball did have the steroid scandal 10 years ago because everyone was hitting home runs and they were hitting it out of the ballpark. Literally every third ball was gone. And fans sort of knew there was something going on with supplements. And then it all came out they were using anabolic steroids to really pump up their biceps. And you could tell a lot of these baseball players changed physique almost overnight. And when it all came out, the sport is still recovering. The sport of Major League Baseball is still recovering from the juicing of the ball scandal. Over I think a 10, 15, 20-year period, they were pumping their players full of steroids. You could see that, their arms are just veins popping out. It's embarrassing. But when it comes to this topic, it's an interesting topic because we can cover every sport here. We really can. I mean, I don't know what it is about Olympic sports having it more. I think it's more political based with political, state-sponsored doping programs. Hello. But I don't know why some sports have it worse than others. There's obviously we're discussing players' unions and things like that. When you don't have an athletes' trade union, so I don't think track and field does. I don't think athletes are signed up to a players' union or a sportsman's union where they can go, I have a concern about a teammate, or I have an issue with alcohol or drugs. Can I get help? There doesn't seem to be that kind of process in place where they can go get help for their issues. And there doesn't seem to be the governance of some of these Olympic sports don't seem to have the governance either. That's a concern. But there's some interesting questions there. I don't know why. There's a variety of reasons why. In the more traditional team sports that aren't really Olympic sports, such as your rugby and your football and your ice hockey is an Olympic sport, but the rules are slightly different. But your main league sports where you actually have an organised league, it doesn't appear to be steroids is the problem. It's more the recreational drugs, because professional sports have at the top end more money. Russia, yeah, that sort of blew up in their faces. Partly why they got allowed back in was they got the World Cup as well, and they're hosting the World Cup. So it was more political. But I think that was more political based. Yeah, the Russians were cheating, but guess what? So were the Kenyans. So were the Americans. Every nation has at least one drugs cheat. And we've seen a series of I think like 3 or 4 British athletes get done as well. So no one's immune from it. I think that was more political. There was a bit of political motivation behind the Russia IOC ban. The reason why it's been lifted, you know why? They've got a football World Cup, which we're going to talk on our next question. That's why that's all political based. There's a lot of politics going on where they're using the sport as a political pinball, which is wrong, because I think the sport would do better than the bloody diplomacy, because the diplomats can't do it. The World Cup, I don't have a particular favourite, and looking at all the teams that qualified and some of the teams that have missed out, I wouldn't be surprised if a South American team does quite well. I wouldn't be surprised if it's an all-European final. And I wouldn't be surprised if an underdog or a dark horse goes far in the tournament. I don't know who wins the World Cup. I'm not going to try and predict, because there could be Ronaldo get injured tonight, for example, in the Champions League final. There you go, because he's playing tonight. That ruins Portugal's preparation. He's their best player. Henderson could get injured for Liverpool. He's one of England's best midfielders. So I'm not going to make a prediction on the World Cup, but I will say this: a South American team will do quite well. Like look for Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay. They could have a good run. A dark horse team like a Costa Rica, like they could repeat what they did 4 years ago and have a good run. And I think it'll be an all-European final. So look out for the Germans, the Belgians, and the French. They're the European teams I would expect to be in and around the final 4. But honestly, I don't know who wins. There's a lot of football to be played. It's a long tournament. The travel and the weather will really affect players, especially the travel and the humidity. European summers get very hot and very humid. Right now, it is roasting here in England, and it's only May, and we're having a very hot May. Mid-20s at the moment. It could hit as high as 31 bank holiday Monday over here in the UK. So we will see. The next World Cup won't be watered down necessarily, because I don't mind seeing new teams get in. It makes it more entertaining when the quality level is that little bit less. It's actually more entertaining to watch. but it's in Qatar, it's in the desert, so even the good teams are going to struggle in 50-degree heat. Players could die in Qatar. That shows how corrupt FIFA was when they gave that World Cup away. The Russian one I could actually understand because Andrei Arshavin is a good player, and they had Zenit St. Petersburg got to the Europa League final and won it, and they had a Champions League final in Moscow. So I can understand the Russians wanting to get the World Cup. Corruption aside, the Qatar one makes no sense. I know, let's put a World Cup in the middle of the desert where it hits 50 degrees and not even life lives on a cellular level out here. It doesn't rain. It rains 4 times a year if you're lucky, and that's it for about an hour. That is how mad that vote. I do not understand it. Yes, Qatar does play football. So Saudi Arabia's got a very good football team for Arabia, like the Middle East, Asian standards. They've got many World Cups and scored some brilliant goals and played at the highest level. But they have to play their games at night. They have to irrigate the pitch, especially. They have to have these special mist sprays so the fans don't boil to death and the players can, cool down. They have to have regular water breaks. Wow, you're asking about my nature. That's a dangerous question to ask there, Mike. Wow. It depends what the bribe's for. Because someone can give me here's $1 million as a gift. That's something I would happily take. But what's the bribe for? That's a question. How are you going to be bribing? Okay, you're the football fan. I know I follow your channel very, almost not religiously. I only follow the certain videos that I possibly have an interest in because not all the topics, football topics to talk about would interest me. But it is interesting. You're saying I'm offered a bribe for about £1 million, €1 million, $1 million. What's the bribe for? Am I going to give favourable access to a sponsor? Right, here we go. Okay, well, it's not as simple as that. UEFA is the federations of Europe. So every single European football federation from Liechtenstein and San Marino all the way up to England and Germany are part of UEFA because their clubs play in UEFA sanctioned club competitions, and you get the coefficient points. It is interesting. Apparently, we're going by, we'll go from 1970 onwards. I think that's the best way to look at the World Cup. Okay, I'm going to use it because I know a lot about the World Cups from '66 to present day and how they were awarded. From 1970 to 1986, that's a 16-year period. So 66 will leave out because we obviously played that here in England. From 1970, they went to Mexico. Okay, this is important. Mexico. Okay, great footballing country. A few years before, they had the Olympics, military regime killing thousands. They went there. Then they go to West Germany, and East Germany qualifies for that tournament. So there's some political stuff there. 78, they go to Argentina. Military government killing thousands of people involved in the dirty war. Okay, so this is, bear with me, guys. 82, they go to Spain just after Franco has died, and Juan Carlos is now king, and there was an attempted military coup. Yeah. 86, they're back in Mexico again. Think on that, okay? In 16 years, from 70 and 86, there are very few World Cups, only 4 World Cups. They go to Mexico twice. 1990, they go to Italy. Now, Italy does have some places at the time. I lived in Italy after that. I went to Italy on holiday after that, and I started living there every summer in the years prior. This is called the Third Italian Republic, okay? There was a big anti-mafia Maxi trial. That's what's called the Maxi trial. So if you keep asking the questions, put the questions in, I'm going to explain the Maxi trial. Big anti-mafia case. 1990, the World Cup there. There's a lot of political violence. It's called the Years of Lead. The left and right wings in Italy were blowing each other up. The Bologna train bombing. Some mafia killings. They assassinated. So I think there was a Carabinieri general was gunned down in Sicily, assassinated in his car with his wife. Bombs were left out underneath police. It's basically like the Troubles in Northern Ireland. So a lot of political violence in Italy. Falcone gets blown up shortly after the Italian World Cup in '92. outside Palermo Airport on the motorway. I've been over where they blew them up, and there's a big plaque. It's really, really moving, the memorial they left with. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, 94, the US gets it. It's great for the game. Part of the reason why the MLS was set up. I did my history bit on the MLS. Okay, 98, France gets it, and that's also a lot of issues in France with ETA, which is a Spanish Basque terrorist organisation, also killing French police officers and politicians. The Corsicans are leaving bombs outside police stations. There's a Corsican separatist movement, and the country was very divided. There was a lot of uncertainty politically. There was a lot of corruption. And now Platini's come out and said, "Yeah, we were corrupt to get it." Fucking great. 2002, the first Asian World Cup, Korea and Japan. That is a brilliant move. South Korea and Japan getting the World Cup, brilliant move. Massive sports market. I can understand why they went there. Time zones were a bit weird, but I understand why they went there. There's no corruption involved in that one that we know of. 2006, Germany gets it. One of the best tournaments I've ever seen. I watched every single game. I had two TVs on at a time, so I could watch the final group games at the same time, running between rooms. One of the best tournaments I've ever seen, without doubt. One of my favourite tournaments as well. 2010, South Africa gets it. First African World Cup. And there's a bit of corruption involved in that with Jacob Zuma, but we know there was some corrupt voting, but it's not a country that we think doesn't deserve it because they've had a Rugby Union World Cup and a Cricket World Cup, and they've shown they can put on big tournaments. The Rugby Union World Cup was the first Rugby World Cup I watched, and I loved it as a kid. Why I played the sport, and it's showing that they're trying to move on from their apartheid past. I understand why South Africa got that World Cup for the reasons. It's the first one in Africa. It's the richest economy in Africa. And they're football mad in Africa. Very corrupt continent, we know this, but football fans, it made sense to take it to Africa. A lot of sense. But there were corrupt dealings in that World Cup bidding process. We know about this. And then they take it to Brazil. Now, Brazil weren't corrupt in getting the World Cup. There was corruption in the government for other reasons. But that was a very good World Cup, actually. And it had been in Brazil before. South America is a World Cup mad continent. But again, in the bidding process, it comes out that in all these World Cups from 1970 till now, there's been corruption in the bidding process. And Sepp Blatter was involved from, I think, 1974 onwards. Hence why Mexico got the World Cup twice in 16 years. I'm just putting it out there. The next, after Qatar, there's another bid being put in. Now, Morocco wants to have the World Cup. Now, Morocco is one of the... Okay, there are some issues with Morocco with Islamic fundamentalism. However, and the Western Sahara, that's a political issue. However, Morocco is one of the more progressive African countries, believe it or not, even though it's a Muslim state, it's one of the more progressive African countries. It has a lot of Western investment and links with Europe. It wants the World Cup. So does the US again. Important. With a Canadian and Mexican bid. Now, look what's happening in Mexico right now with the drug war and the US border between California and Texas, the drug war. A lot of people dying, a lot of corruption. Oh no, Canada's got corruption. There's match fixing in the Canadian minor leagues. That is rampant in the Toronto area. But no, Canada could do it. It won't be as hot. It'd be the perfect climate. It's whether the Canadians will buy in, because the Canadian football team is just not good enough. But no, US are trying to do a joint bid with Mexico and Canada for the World Cup in 2026. Morocco is a smaller nation where the travel distances are not so much, all on the same time zone. US, you're on 3 time zones. Yeah, let's just have a think about that. They've given it to Qatar. Yeah, that's another reason. They want to do a 3-way joint tournament. There's only been one joint tournament in World Cup history, that was Korea and Japan. And there's also only been one joint Euros in Belgium and Holland. It's very odd very rare to give a co-host unless you're expanding the World Cup in numbers. But Mexico, imagine Mexico having a third World Cup, because that would be their third. Yeah, Poland, Ukraine 2012 as well. Yeah, that's another one I forgot. But imagine Mexico having 3 World Cups since 1970. So we're calling it the modern era, okay, the modern era of football. Mexico had the World Cup twice in 16 years as a sole host. Now, a lot's happened in Mexico since 1970. The drug war has moved up from Colombia and central and further south in Peru and Bolivia into Mexico. The cocaine smuggling route has moved further up. They're now tracking it overland by train and by road into Mexico, and by boat. They're not flying it straight into the US, and they're not smuggling it out of Colombia directly that way. They're going through Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia. The cocaine has been funneled up through Central America more. Mexico has a very nasty drug war. The Colombian cartels are not as strong as they were, but the Mexican cartels are very strong and run huge tracts of the country. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying or being imprisoned or being tortured or being made homeless in Mexico right now. There's a thing called the disappear about all these students that have gone missing. Yeah, they're bidding for a World Cup with the US and Canada. They're planning to make a bid. So is Morocco. I think Morocco should get it. Great for TV time zones, because of where it is. It's on the same time zone as the UK. So TV rights would be great all around the world. Very traditional. It's a football passionate country that's had great success in the African Cup of Nations in the past. Has qualified for the World Cup before, so it's not like it's going to be never qualified before. A lot of players play in Europe at a high level in the various leagues. Should Morocco get it? Second African World Cup. Grow the game in a continent that's football mad. Mexico's already had 2 World Cups. We shall see. But like the Qatar one, we're just looking at the history of the World Cup bidding process from 1970 till now. And Sepp Blatter was involved in every World Cup from 74. I believe that's when he joined worked for the previous president of FIFA all the way up until he got fired. He's been involved in every World Cup from 74 till 2014. And the corruption levels go up. You've got to look at back to Mexico. Okay, Mexico in '86 was not the brutal regime it was in 1970, but they go back a second time. They go to Argentina, the dirty war. Yeah, I'm just saying how I see it. Some of the countries they went to between 1970 and now have had some pretty hideous human rights abuses. And the corruption in Mexico is far more rampant than it is in Russia, I can tell you that for a fact. The Russians are corrupt. Oh, don't get me wrong. But Mexico, oh dear. That is bandit country. Poland and Ukraine, yeah, pretty poor Euros 2012, to be honest. I didn't think that was a very good tournament. El Salvador and Guatemala, yes, a lot of them are being used as drug mules because their poverty levels are higher. And you've got what's going on in Honduras as well. Central America is not a nice place to live right now. If you look at the history of World Cups, where they've been hosted, Uruguay had the first one, then you had 2 in Europe, then you also had World War II, and then you had Uruguay again in 1950. That's a sort of a healing process because Europe was in ruins and they wanted to get the World Cup back on track. And so, guess what made sense? Take it to Uruguay. Wasn't devastated by war. Oh no, they took it to Brazil when Uruguay won it because South America wasn't devastated by the global conflict. Then was it Germany in '54? I know the Germans won it in '54, but it was back in Europe. And then Sweden had it in '58. '62 was in Chile. '66 was in England. Then it was in Latin America and Mexico. Then Germany. Then Argentina. So they sort of did, bounced between Europe and Central and South America. Oh God, if Uruguay and Argentina hate each other at football, they riot. So do Paraguay. All these nations physically, they're ultras. They want to kill each other. It's insane. Monaco only has a professional football team that plays in the French league system. They do not have an international side. AS Monaco is the only team that play in Monaco, and they play in the French league system. They do not have a national side. Czech Republic, nah, not a big enough country. They could host the Euros. They couldn't host the World Cup by themselves. They would have to do it with Slovakia as a joint bid. Austria and Switzerland did a joint bid for the Euros in 2008. So I don't know. I think Qatar is a turning point, as a watershed, because I can't see them cancelling the tournament in 4 years' time. It's when they play it, because even in winter, it's still bloody hot in the desert. Still bloody hot. I honestly don't know whether Qatar will actually go ahead or not. Yes, I've seen Croatian fans. I've seen lots of European fans throwing flares and firing flares and setting them off. I don't know what it is about football, but they seem to get flares in the grounds. Seem to get them in. You would think with the political situation in Europe, with the amount of terrorist attacks we've had, that they might do better stringent checks. They still get them into grounds. Well, I remember Euro '96. I remember that as a kid. I remember France '98, so I know what just across the channel was happening in France. Don't remember Italian '90 because I was a baby, but I've still see the aftermath of Italian '90 and some of the posters and memorabilia that's still around, and some of the stadiums that have been used now. The San Siro was built for that tournament, and then Bari Stadium, the San Michele, I believe it's called, and were all built for that tournament. What do I get behind it? I don't know. I mean, we've tried twice before, and it wasn't really well advertised here for us. It's like the Olympic bid. When we got the Olympics, it wasn't really greatly advertised as well as it could have been to get behind and support. Would I get behind it? I don't know. If it's a joint Anglo-Welsh-Scottish bid, maybe. We'll have to get Northern Ireland. We'll have to have all four nations involved, personally, with all four nations involved for it to really work. An Anglo-Scottish bid, maybe. Anglo-Welsh bid would probably work better than Anglo-Scottish bid. It would be interesting. It really would. But at the moment, the only England, Wales, Northern Ireland are doing rather well in football in the terms of Wales, Northern Ireland have qualified for the Euros last time around 2 years ago. They are close. They were close again qualifying for this tournament. England qualify for tournaments, just fail in them. Scotland just can't qualify. Scotland have not qualified for a major tournament in 20 years. They are lagging well behind in player development and the playing talent. Portugal, they've already hosted the Euros by themselves, 2004. Whether they could host a World Cup, bear in mind you've got to look at population size as well and the size of a country. And can they accommodate hundreds of thousands of fans from around the world? The Euros is different to the World Cup because you've only got one continent to deal with rather than six. It would have to be a bigger country. Like Spain's had the World Cup in '82. Italy's had the World Cup in '90. England had it in '66. Bigger countries with bigger populations that can actually support the foreign fans coming over. France had it in '98. You've got to look at the population size, not just the country size, but the population size. I think Portugal's a little bit on the small side, and the stadiums aren't massive, and there's not a lot of massive stadiums that, if they were built, the clubs can afford to fill. Not fill, sorry. Just the fan, you've got to think of the clubs long term using these stadiums that they can't fill. That was an issue with the US after the '94 World Cup, was the MLS teams just didn't get the fan base for 10 years, and these stadiums were costing a huge amount of money to run, and they were empty. It's an interesting one, really. I mean, I've been going for over 3 hours now because I'm waiting for the football to start. I'll go for until about 5:30, then I'm going to call it. So I'm going to go for another half hour or so, and then I'm going to call it because it's got really interesting suddenly. All this talk about the World Cup. You've got to look at it this way: the Rugby Union World Cup we had 3 years ago here in England, and what they had in New Zealand in 2011. They used existing stadiums. They upgraded a couple of them here or there, just touched them up a little bit, but they used existing stadiums. The English World Cup for the Rugby Union, we also used football stadiums a lot as well. So St James's Park, the Ricoh Arena, Wembley, football stadiums we used to help with the the logistics to save money. They just rented football stadiums that were bigger. They used Brighton Hove Stadium, where Japan beats South Africa. I I don't see why you have to build all these massive, upgrade all these stadiums, but actually there's loads of stadiums around. So yes, England could probably, or the home nation, let's say Britain, could do a bid, but we have the stadiums in place that are already UEFA standard for European competition. Even Bournemouth Stadium actually passes for World Cup minimum standard for the UEFA and FIFA for international football. It does actually class it. So every Premier League stadium would be usable. I think all the Championship stadiums would be usable as well. Ironically, but they're all seater, so they have to be in the Championship. They have to be all seater. So the stadium's already there. We don't need to suddenly build loads of new stadiums for a tournament. We have them all. But for some reason, all the bidding process, all these new stadiums have to get built. It's just ludicrous when they're already there. Just all we've got to do is maybe upgrade one or two of them. I think it's to do with the building contracts and the sponsorship contracts. But it is what it is. I mean, I honestly, I don't think any country deserves to host it the most. It's good to see it in new places. I think Australia could be a very good candidate for the World Cup because it's an Australian winter, so it'd be cooler, and they have the stadiums in place. There's an issue: the NRL and the Aussie rules. They would be stadium clashes, but Australia could do it. They've had a rugby union World Cup, did it very, very well. They have the stadiums in place to do it, and they have the I believe the fan base there. They have the world class stadiums in Australia. Just they've only got 6 or 7 cities over 1 million people. That's an issue. But they have the stadiums, and they have a growing league, so it would be doable in Australia. If New Zealand can host a rugby union World Cup, you know, though Portugal did have the Euros in 2004. Portugal hosted in 2004, and it was a perfect tournament, very good tournament. Watched all the games. Portugal 2004 was a very, very good tournament. That's when Wayne Rooney burst onto the scene, and Portugal watched the final against Greece. It's doable with Portugal. It's got an Atlantic coastline. It's actually cooler than Spain. If Spain can host the World Cup in '82, Portugal hosted the Euro 2004. It works. They play football there anyway. I just think you got to think of. But it was in summer. They did it in summer. They hosted the tournament very successfully. So I don't see a problem with Portugal being part of a joint bid with Spain necessarily, or France or Morocco for a bid. I don't see a problem with that. I think the issue is the bidding process has been proven to be so corrupt since the mid '70s when Sepp Blatter and Havalanga, I think was his name. Havalanga was the Brazilian guy in charge of FIFA until Blatter took over in I think mid '90s. Those two allowed the corruption to seep in, but they were key in driving it into new markets. They were very interesting in taking the game outside of the traditional South America and Europe. That's why the US got a World Cup in '94. Was one of Havalanga's last dealings was with allowing, I think, the US to get the World Cup in '94 because they've been submitting bids for a long time and interest for a long time, and that was part of the reason why. But Russia getting the World Cup is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of it is a lot of the politics to the side is detracting from what could be a very good tournament. I think Qatar is the herring in the red herring in the room. The elephant in the room is the one in Qatar. That shouldn't have happened. Russia, I can accept. The way they got the World Cup was corrupt, but it makes sense to have it in that location because there is a fan base there. There are successful clubs in Russia. The national side hasn't been bad in the past. But Africa has. South Africa has. North Africa has, but South Africa has. Asia's, well, Japan and Korea's had a World Cup. I think Australia could do a World Cup. It's whether they have the finance and the stadium size and stadium capacity to do it. Because I can't see them playing games in Townsville somehow. I just can't. It'll still be too hot. But we'll see what happens really. No, but the Dutch did do a very good Euros in 2000. They had the Euro 2000 tournament with Belgium, and they had most of the games in Holland as well. They have some big stadiums in Holland. They do have the population. They do have about, I think, 16 to 20 million people. They have some big stadiums that are UEFA standard that have hosted Champions League and Europa League finals. when it was previous decades. Um, they are a football country. It makes sense. They are a very successful footballing nation. We should not discount country size, its population, and whether they can get the corporate money. But there are stadiums there that are more than suitable for World Cup football. Under the standards that are set by FIFA, for the insane standards, they have some very modern stadiums in Holland. Same with Belgium; they've got some good stadiums as well. Denmark, a bit on the small side, but Denmark and Sweden could work. Denmark and Sweden could work. Denmark, Norway, and Sweden could work. The Scandinavian countries could do it. It's interesting. There's only so many countries in the world that actually have the infrastructure in place to have a major tournament. Um, yeah, but we saw the the Rugby League World Cup when they had it. The temperatures in Port Moresby were killer. Um, but yeah, Australia and PNG could do it. Yeah, they could. But Papua New Guinea and Port Moresby, they'd have to upgrade the national stadium significantly and the infrastructure around, which I don't think the Papua New Guinean government has the money for. It's a lot of money, and I don't think PNG has the money for it. Australia definitely could do the World Cup. They have the infrastructure in place. They have the stadiums in place. It's whether the locals would happily buy in to supporting. That's the question. Is whether people in Queensland and Western Australia, South Australia would happily buy in. Because Victoria, New South Wales, and bits of Queensland are sports mad, but in other areas, you won't be able to play it in Darwin and Northern Territory. It's just too hot all year round. Players would drop dead. No, it's a one-off for the Euros. They've even said it's a one-off. They're going to go back to the nation hosting format because it buggers up the qualification. The way the qualification works, the hosts don't have to qualify, and so how it's done, and they get more money. UEFA gets more money out of a host nation bidding. It works better. It means you have one central base, one country, several training bases. It's all in one place. And they have said that this was Platini's dream, and now he's out. We're going back to normal. They've said it's a one-off. They have stated it's a one-off. It will never happen again. It was a crazy dream that Platini had. Platini's been proven that he gave this idea with backhanders in mind because it's been proven there was corruption involved in it, and it's a one-off. It will never happen again because you need a centralised infrastructure for the fans, for everyone being in one place. When they're all over the place, it's a pain in the arse for ticketing and getting fans travel around. It just doesn't work. Great utopian dream doesn't work in reality. And the UEFA said it's a one-off and it's not going to be repeated at any other international tournament ever again. At least not in our lifetime or in the foreseeable future. It won't happen. The fact that Wembley gets the semi-finals and the final and one of the quarter-finals, I'm pretty happy with that. So in 2 years' time, I might be able to get a ticket for a final, which will cost me about £1,000, but there you go. But no, it's the logistics behind it makes no sense. And UEFA have stated the current UEFA hierarchy have stated it's a one-off. It's never going to be repeated. It's logistically going to prove difficult enough as it is. Fans are already not happy with it, with the amount of travel. If you have it in one country, it's got less travel between. You can actually stay in one hotel in one country and just drive a couple of hours to a game, drive back to your hotel. 13 different countries. That's a lot of extra hotels, a lot of extra travel, cost. Fans will just not do it. You'll get less fans actually watching the games long term. In real, because some people buy 4 or 5 tickets. They buy all the group stage tickets of their country, and they'll watch their country play all the group stage, and then they might see if they can get a quarter final or a semi final or a final ticket. Makes no sense. Unless all the nations hosting have all the nations that are qualified. Otherwise, it makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know who gets the Confederations Cup. I really don't. It could be anyone. If they're saying the Confederations Cup will not be Qatar, that could say that Qatar may struggle to host the tournament. They may have to find someone else short notice. And there's several countries that got all the stadiums in place already. England, well, the UK being one. As the home nations, England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales have got stadiums in place. Just saying. Yes, but when Sweden hosted the World Cup, it was a smaller tournament. but you could have a Sweden, Denmark, Norway joint bid. Makes sense. Sports from our country, and the temperatures won't be as hot as they would be in Italy or Spain. If it's an Asian country, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Japan or Korea or Thailand, somewhere like that, which has already got an infrastructure in place, a sporting infrastructure in place. Japan has got the World Cup in 2019 for the rugby union, so they could use some of those stadiums that have been upgraded to a high international standard. They've proven they can host international tournament in Korea and Japan 2002. It could be doable. Or it could be somewhere like, I don't know, anywhere really in Asia that has this, it could be Turkey. Turkey could do it. I honestly don't. I'm trying to think. There's not many other places that already have all the stadiums in place at a high enough standard in Asia. Some of the stadium quality in Asia is pretty shocking. Thailand does have the infrastructure in place. China has the infrastructure in place. Japan, Korea, Turkey. They're the Asian countries that have a lot of stadiums in place where you could host a tournament. I don't. We'll see what FIFA come out with closer to the date. They will come out. Oh no, but trust me, the Turks have got the Champions League final. So yeah, no, you can have the war with the Kurds and ISIS and still get a Champions League final and have European games played there. So no, Turkey's fine. They're brutally ethnically cleansing Kurds, but they're allowed to have a Champions League final. That's one of the reasons why I questioned why Turkey and Istanbul got a Champions League final in 2020 when they. Oh no, but Turkey is classed as a UEFA nation because it actually qualifies for the European Championships, and they've played in the Euros before. Turkey comes under Europe for qualification. So does Israel. Even though they're in Asia, Turkey and Israel both qualify for UEFA. It is classed as a UEFA nation, but it is on the Asian continent, and Turkey does have the stadiums in place that could host a tournament. And just because they're killing the Kurds, don't matter. They've hosted several champions. They've hosted several European finals in Istanbul. They had the issues with the Kurds then. They allowed Spain to have the 82 World Cup when ETA were setting off car bombs. They allowed France to have the 98 World Cup when ETA and the Corsicans were setting off pipe bombs and assassinating police officers deliberately. They gave France the Euros in 2016 with the heightened security risk. Turkey's a fine bet because there's a lot of big corporations that are based in Turkey that produce car parts, white goods, haulage firms, got shipping firms. There's a lot of corporate money in Turkey. A lot. It doesn't matter. It's not an AFC nation. That's one of the few nations I can think off the top of my head that has the stadium infrastructure in place. China, yeah, I'm surprised they haven't actually tried to put a bid in for the World Cup. I've been going for nearly 3.5 hours, Kemmel. 3.5 hours. I'm going to stop at 5:30 though, so you've only got 20 minutes. I'm going to have my dinner and get ready for the Champions League final. But I'm going to go for another 20 odd minutes. I just had nothing to do at home. The house was quiet. I had all the internet to myself. The feed's been working tonight. But we've discussed World Cup and European football history. I will be doing a live stream tomorrow night as well. Usual time. I just haven't done one for a while. That's me having my new job and trying to balance work and this and getting all the time for videos and time to do other things socially with friends and stuff. It's trying to balance it all, and it's been a very tiring couple of weeks. But no, tomorrow night's fine. Well, I've had a few issues with connectivity the last day or so for some reason with my internet. It could be to do with the weather. We've had a few thundery showers floating around. There has been some work on the local internet network that I've seen in various points. They've been digging up the road. So if the connection's been good today, let's hope it's touch wood. It's good tomorrow. But interesting, the questions asked. I did this on a whim. This wasn't like a planned live stream. I wasn't planning to do it as such. It just so happened that I had 3 or 4 hours spare, and I thought, sod it, we might as well ask some questions. I mean, I'm surprised I haven't got more questions on other sports, such as like the cricket and the ice hockey playoffs. But you know, uh, the US, it's what on the East Coast it's lunchtime, on the West Coast they're still in bed. So um, it is difficult. I mean, Australia, they're going to bed. I mean, it because of where I am in the world, the time zoning. I mean, a lot of you are from the UK, so that's all Europe. So it's good for you guys. But I wasn't really planning to do one today. Really, I was just had a bit of free time and thought, why not? Um, a good way to spend my afternoon, I suppose. I was going to go on the Xbox and just piss around playing Call of Duty, but uh, it is what it is. But no, I'll take a few more questions and I'm going to start winding it down. I mean, we've discussed a hell of a lot about a lot of topics on some sports that don't normally get discussed on the live streams. And then of course, we ended up on the football and the World Cup. And obviously, yeah, it's bedtime on Saturday in Vegas. Yes, it is late in Vegas. I don't know what time bedtime is in Vegas. Um, I don't think there'll be a European Super League. I think there's a lot going on in Europe socially and politically. I don't see a European Super League. I cannot see that being good for the domestic competitions of all the countries involved. I really can't. Can I rule it out? No. Would it be good? No. I personally don't think there will be, but that doesn't mean they won't try it and fail, and then it would cause a lot more problems than it's worth. I mean, you've got to look at how the league structures are done. It would then devalue the Champions League and the Europa League. That'll be pointless if you've got a European Super League. It would devalue every national competition. Things like the FA Cup, the French Cup, the German Cup, the Spanish, Copa del Rey, the Italian, there's the Italian League Cup, all these domestic cup competitions. It would devalue and derail the sport. I mean, you look at rugby, and you've got the Pro League, which covers Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, and Italy, and now it's the two South African teams in them, the two weakest South African teams that have been hopeless all year because they've been playing constantly for 18 months. You have a couple of ice hockey leagues that cover more than one country, like the Alpine Hockey League, which covers bits of Italy, Slovenia, and Austria. But for the most part, most of the leagues are domestic in that country, in whatever sport. A Super League, I don't think that's a good idea. I really don't. I think it would devalue the sport further. That's already having issues with various player wages, class debt, transfers being out of control. I don't know if it will work because you've got all the different currencies. You've not only just got the euro, you've got the pound, you've got the krona, you've got the zloty in Poland. You've got countries outside the EU, so with the Swiss franc in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, for example. How would you pay the players? Would it be in euros? Would it be in pounds? Would it be in Swiss francs? How would the players get paid? How would the wages be worked out? That's something that you look in the NHL in North America, the wages and the budgets were worked out in US dollars, not Canadian. PSG, well, financial fair play has been proven to be a joke because it's taken a long time to actually happen. I'm surprised Man City haven't got fined, but that's all it is. It's a fine, and the owners, billionaires, can pay it. They'll transfer the money into the club so the club can pay the fine. It doesn't deter them. Does not deter them. Simple. The Italian rugby, Zebra and Treviso have been very good this season. They've actually played better. They've been more competitive this season. They've done really, really well this year. And last year, they started to show signs of growth. Leinster are just a production of talent. It doesn't matter, that Ireland's population is smaller. They have really bought into rugby, even though it's a Gaelic amateur association sports is the main sport in Ireland. They have bought in. What you're finding is these two South African sides joining the Pro League has shown that it's helped with the development of the Italian players, and they are developing quite well. And it's to do with grassroots funding. Italy's a strange one. They don't do sport as compulsory at school as PE. It's not a compulsory thing at Italian school. That's why my cousins went to school over here, and had to live with us on weekends. Went to boarding school over here. Was Italian school did not have compulsory sport, and they were sports mad. And my aunt said, "No, your kids are going to school over here," so they had to, learn how to read and write English, which I'd help them with. That's why Italy struggles at player development, is they don't play sport at school. You have to go and sign up at your local sports club, which is a community thing, but is not as popular as it used to be. Yeah, they do. But what I'm looking at with Real Madrid is their defence. And the way Liverpool play, when they play with pace, they destroyed Man City, they destroyed Roma, and they play with a high press. I'm not sure Ronaldo's 100% fit. I'm not sure that defence is as solid as, because you've got to look at how they scrape through both the quarters and the semis. They wobbled their way through on away goals. So I'm a bit not 100% sold on Real Madrid's defence. I think Liverpool can expose them with their pace. I think it'll be a high-scoring game because both teams play a high press. There'll be a lot of spacing behind. So I think it could be a very high-scoring game. But I think Liverpool will want to do it in 90 minutes. And I think Real Madrid wouldn't mind going extra time because they have that mentality. But I think fitness, I think the Premier League, Liverpool are a bit fitter. And I think if they get ahead, Liverpool have got the fitness because of the Premier League pace and the style of game the Premier League has. I think Real Madrid have the tactical nous up here, but the spacing behind the defence, that's going to be interesting. It's Bale wasting his career at Madrid. He's making good money at Madrid. I don't think he's 100% happy there. Same with Ronaldo. There's rumours this season Ronaldo wasn't 100% happy at Madrid either. Interesting. David Beckham obviously went to Real Madrid. Michael Owen's been there. Jonathan Woodgate, remember him? They've all played for Real Madrid. I don't think Zidane is. Zidane's has managed to get them in the big game one-off games. Besides Klopp. Klopp has managed to win a domestic league competition. Zidane hasn't. Barcelona's been dominating, and Atletico are better league-wise. On a regular league season, Zidane's not as good as Klopp. Klopp has actually proven in the Bundesliga he can win it. Yes, Zidane's got those Champions League titles, but league-wise, they're not on the same page as Atletico and Barcelona at the moment. One-off games, yes. Series of games, no. I think Zidane is not everyone's cup of tea at Real Madrid either. And I think he should have possibly coached. Star players don't always make star coaches. That's why I think Klopp is a better coach, because he wasn't a star player, he was an average player. And what he did with Mainz, getting them into the Bundesliga, and what he did with Dortmund when they were going from no hopers to making them title contenders and actually winning the title and challenging Bayern Munich, I think Klopp's better. But Real Madrid are always going to be one of the biggest clubs in Spain. They're never going to finish outside the top four. And star players don't always make star coaches. Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't know. I don't think he's fully fit. When Zidane comes out, he's 100%, 120% fit. We heard that before the World Cup final with Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, the fat one for Brazil in '98, and he ended up being hopeless. And we found out he was epileptic and had a seizure before the game. So whenever I hear a coach saying a player is 110, 120% fit, they're not. I'll say this about the Galacticos. They've always managed to attract star players even when the team was shit. Zidane stayed even when the team were useless. They went through managers regularly. And I honestly think he's gotten to 3 Champions League finals in a row. It's not going to change now. Real Madrid are known for axing managers. Same with Barcelona. Bobby Robson. This is why I say Pep Guardiola is not unsackable. Bobby Robson won a treble at Barcelona in '97. He won the Spanish Cup. He won what was the UEFA Cup, and he won the Cup Winners' Cup, which was the Super Cup kind of thing. And they sacked him because Real Madrid won the league. He won 3 trophies in a season, and Barcelona sacked the great Sir Bobby Robson, one of the best managers the game has ever seen. And Guardiola was playing for Bobby Robson. And Guardiola says he learned a lot from Bobby Robson that season. That's why I think Guardiola is not unsackable. I think he's very sackable. And at his press conference where he says, I've signed for 3 years, but I may not stay, and it's dependent on success. I think some people have inferred he means the league. No, he means the Champions League. He can't win the Champions League at Man City. He may go elsewhere. And I think now the fans have got this delusion of grandeur at Man City that he's going to win them everything. And when it doesn't go right and they start getting frustrated, the board may go, it's not working out, mate. Yeah. Guardiola is sackable. He is. He hasn't won the Champions League since 2013. He's very sackable. He also doesn't stick around a club very long. So I don't see him sticking out the full term of his contract. He's never stayed at a club more than 3-4 seasons. I don't see him sticking out his contract. Yeah, I do think Liverpool play at a faster pace than Real Madrid. And also, here's a little tidbit of random knowledge. Every time Liverpool won the Champions League, the opposition have been playing in white. Who plays in white? Real Madrid. Who plays in red? Liverpool. Yeah. And also, every time they won the Champions League, or what was the European Cup, there was a royal wedding days before. The last 2 times they have lifted the trophy, there was a royal wedding days before. Charles and Diana, Charles and Camilla, Harry and Meghan. Just saying. There's a random little tidbits. Yes, there were 10 managerial changes during the season, and of course, managerial changes after the season. There's been a high manager turnover this year in the Premier League. I think it's mad. And the same in the Championship and what is now League One. There's been a huge manager turnover. It's a merry-go-round. It is a merry-go-round. I think football's starting to lose the plot more and more each season. I think the amount of money has got out of control. I think the players' wages are overinflated. The ticket price is going up, and this gets discussed every live stream. The price of sport, and I compare it to other sports that I watch, and other sports that I watch on TV or watch in person, and how affordable other sports are. Yeah, the TV deal. Scudamore has screwed up the TV deal as well. That was in the paper. Little column on it because they've got 40 odd games they haven't sold, and they underestimated the value that Amazon would put on the TV bid. They underestimated Amazon a lot. I know they overestimated the value that Amazon would pay, and Amazon just weren't willing to pay as much money. They were overbidding for Amazon, and they've screwed up the dealing of the TV deal. I hope it ends up on free to air. I hope it ends up on the Channel 5 network, Channel 4, ITV or BBC. I hope they get TV rights for those 40 odd games. I really do, because they honestly properly screwed that up. But you've got to notice, I said this earlier, look at the parallel between TV deal with Sky and the quality of the national sides in the UK. Just look at that parallel, especially Scotland and England, right? Before Sky TV, we had probably the best group of players since '66. In the '80s and the '90s, we had a damn good group of players that came through. Look at them now. Look how much the TV deal is worth. The quality level has collapsed. Oh, no, Sergio Ramos, he has a poor temperament. He has regularly got sent off. I honestly, okay, Fulham are ahead of Aston Villa. I want to see Jack Grealish back in the Premier League, but I'm not fussed if it's Villa or Fulham. I'm really not. I mean, I have connection with the West Midlands through family, but I also have connections to the west side of London through family as well. So and friends to both locations. So I'm not overly fussed. Whoever gets up gets up. It's the playoff system. It's not a perfect system. Some people say it should be the top 3 teams in the league go up to the league above. Others say it should be a playoff structure. The Scottish playoff structure is different. I've been educated on that by a viewer. Some say it's a very horrible way to solve it through an extra couple of games, but it's worth £240 million. It's the most valuable game in world football. Is the Championship playoff final, which I think is obscene. absolutely obscene. But it is what it is. But anyway, I'll go for another couple of minutes. Oh no, I don't want it for the money either. Yes, BT Sport did that last year as well. I will say this: the coverage is shit though. I watched the Europa League final last year and the Champions League final last year on YouTube, and this year, BT Sport have realised they're just not getting the viewership. But here's another problem: if you live outside the UK or Ireland, you cannot watch the Champions League final on live stream. You have to wait a day for it to be re-uploaded, which I think is wrong as well. So it's only available for the British and Irish viewers. So if you live in the US or you live in Europe and you want to watch the Champions League final on YouTube, you can't. They just won't let you. The stream will cut out deliberately. BT Sport though realised no one's watching their crap channel, so they're desperate to try and get us to buy into their channel. BT Sport is horrendous coverage. I watched the Europa League last week, and the 45-minute build-up was absolutely turgid. There was so many. Yeah, but the NASCAR, right? They say they stream it live, and American fans going they can't find the NASCAR on YouTube. But a day later, they put the NASCAR full races for both the Xfinity and the Cup Series up. Some of these sports, they say they stream live, they don't. Right. Any more questions? Because I'm going to head off now for dinner, and then I'm going to watch the Champions League, and then I'll do a video on the Champions League, and then there'll be a live stream tomorrow night. And I need to get some sleep because I'm absolutely shattered. But I also want to go to the pub later as well and have a bevy. I'm from India. Right. Well, there are ways of doing it with VPNs. I think it all should be free to air. Really, I think the corporate dollar has really ruined the sport, and you just got to look at the decline of England's national side and Scotland's national side, and the Sky Sports package, and BT Sport and Setanta and ITV and all those pay-per-view sports. Expectations for Blackburn next season. Competitive. I'm not. I'm not saying we're going to make playoffs. I just want my team to be competitive and survive. We screwed up falling out of the Premier League, and the owners need to change. I don't like our owners. That's where I'm going with that. I think they will sell the club soon, hopefully. Someone actually gives a damn about football rather than just about the corporate dollar. But yeah, I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to take me notes, and I will do a short video on the Champions League final, depending on how late it finishes. Depends on the length of the video. But if it's done at normal time, then I'll whip it up. If it goes direct on penalties, I'll probably have a massive heart attack and be on late because I do want to go out and see my mates tonight. So depending on what time, how long the game takes, depends on my length of video I do on the recap. I might go into great detail, take lots of notes, or I might just keep it brief video and say that this happened. But my Europa League one, I really went into detail. I hope not penalties because I want to go to the pub. I actually want to go to the pub, and they don't have it down the pub because they don't have BT Sport at my local pub. It's really annoying. But okay, any more questions? Because I'm going to call it a day because I've been going for 3.5 hours. I think it's my longest live stream ever as well. So we've got people from all over the world watch this one and get involved, which is good. We've had people from America to the US, North America to the really watch the thing. I don't have the channel to watch it, so I'll have to try and find a VPN or just catch the highlights. That it's difficult. The NHL doesn't get great coverage over in the UK. I think it deserves it, especially with the growth of British ice hockey with the national side doing so well. I think that's something we need to consider changing is the TV rights for ice hockey in this country. It's hard to get hold of the rights and the channels that have it. There's not many channels that show it, and it's also the time difference because obviously Vegas, Washington, it's either 5 or 8 hours time difference here in the UK. So when the game starts at 8 in the evening, it's early hours in the morning between midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on where the game is played. And I've got work, so I won't be able to watch it because I've got to be up at like 5, 6 in the morning for work on Tuesday morning. So it's just going to be undoable for me. I'll catch the highlights, and but to watch the game live, unless like a miracle happens, I won't be able to watch it anyway. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. So thanks to everyone. I'll do my Champions League review on the final when I can. Once the final's done, I'm going to get a bite of the week, and then yeah, I'll be doing that. And I shall see you guys on tomorrow's live stream, and I'll have a few videos for you tomorrow. And I shall see you soon. And toodle pip, and good night. Thank you everyone who's been involved. I'm doing it. So thanks a lot, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.